fashion.
Blessed by Bundy, blah, blah, blah.
Started off with a bit, now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hello ho. Web 2, I was living a dream. Now I'm on Web 3, and it is what it seems. Topping the pyramid schemes, I'm telling you. I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up. Surfing on the web and I'm shooting at 3. I've been goated when I got my G. I'm an alien boy from a different planet, yeah. So I got my drink, I'm riding in the 1920s Model T Ford. Car era, Lord. Call me Levi, playing on the keys, boy. And I'm about to put my gloves on. If I said it, then I meant that. Yeah, I like that one, I'm about to get that. Crash that whip for the drumsticks, whiplash. I'm about to get them all. Are you with that? In a white boat, surrounded by blue. I want one, but I got a cop too. I want to fly.
GM, thanks for joining. Drop us a GM in the chat down below. Hit the space up above, the likes, the reposts, the bookmarks, all appreciated. While you're at it, it is a discount deal day on Audible, on Amazon. Go get your everything token if you haven't already, the digital version. $1.99. You won't beat it.
You know, sipping on octane, the only thing around my neck started off with a bit. Now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hello ho. On Web 2, I was living a dream. Now I'm on Web 3, and it is what it seems. Topping the pyramid schemes, I'm telling you. I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up. NFT, Twitter, blockchain. Seeing with the ghosts and we ballin' like the Brown James. Crypto. We can make a trade, get the memo. Refuse not falling for the FOMO. Listening to Coffee with Captain. You know we worldwide, they loco. I ain't never gonna stop rapping. Orlando, yeah, we working magic. We rocking Ethereum amenities. I just went and caught me a half base. Man, I got a shout out to off with a bit. Now I got coin. I see where y'all going. Been poppin' since Web 1, hello ho. On Web 2, I was living a dream. Now I'm on Web 3, and it is what it seems. Topping the pyramid schemes, I'm telling you. I'll sell you a percentage on Nebula. Shout out to Vince, he'll set it up. Breaking the more to choose one, but they got knowledge to move, son. I'm shocking in shades with my brother in suits. Yeah, them blues is coming. Even though it's hard to pick, eeny, miny, mo, soda on the mix, no biting lips, it's time to go. Index number 1, no thumbs up, you gotta scroll. Looking at the ghost in studio, it's time to go. Had a helmet on by myself until I met a mask that wouldn't have a face off. Had to bring my chainsaw, full tank of gas in the drive with my brakes off. I'm A1, but a different kind of steak sauce.
This episode is brought to you by DGen Network, the only community-based Web3 media network, bringing you the very best content in the NFT and cryptocurrency space. Please visit dgen.network and check out our other great shows. That's DGen, DGEN.network.
Welcome to the future.
Welcome to Coffee with Captain. GM. Thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't done so already, drop the GM in the chat down below. Hit us with a like, a repost, or a bookmark, or all the above up on the link to the spaces in the Jumbotron all the way to the right. The reminder for Just Left with Tomorrow. 1 day left this week. It's up above as well. In addition to that post from Steve talking about the $1.99 discount day on Audible. Congratulations on that. Getting the Amazon pump. And I'm Kat, by the way, joined by my talented best-selling author, Steve. As always, this show is purely for entertainment purposes. I've got a lot of bad takes. There's never any financial advice. Unless you want to counter trade, then you're welcome to do so. But other than that, even that, every once in a while, a blind squirrel can catch a nut. So that's not even financial advice. If you're going to do the counter trade, do it purely for entertainment purposes only. Now that we have that out of the way, GM, Steve, how you doing, sir?
GM gives a like, a retweet, a comment down in the purple pill cap. The intro is getting cleaner. You didn't remember it at the beginning, but when you hit it clean. So practice makes perfect. We are getting there with that. But while we warm up the room, again, like, retweet, comment down in the purple pill, give us a GM, hit us with that bookmark. I have something to get into today, but I want to say thanks for the love on the deal on the Amazon Kindle deal. Super honored to be chosen by that. Like, that's not anything we take lightly, that they came through and were like, hey, we're going to help you guys get a bunch more knowledge and a bunch more books in people's hands. We're like, wow, we appreciate that, and found out. In fact, I was DMing someone yesterday. Probably wasn't supposed to say this. Probably they won't give us the deal again for me saying this out loud, but I'll say it. Somebody was mentioning, they're like, I haven't picked up a copy. And I was like, are you a Kindle reader? They're like, actually, yes. I was like, just wait one day. Which I probably shouldn't say because our publisher would be like, one, our publisher probably isn't happy. Two, Amazon's, but I'm just doing it because I didn't want them to go out and purchase, $30 book and then the next day it's 93% off, because we've all been there where you buy an NFT and then the next day the floor crashes and you're like, well, fuck, I could have gotten this thing a whole lot cheaper. So get up there, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog and your cat, and teach them how to read. We got a good deal going, so excited about that. But so thanks for the love on that. Like, that is like, again, things like this are a really big deal for me because it means that like a large institution like Amazon recognized that our book was selling and doing pretty well, and they wanted to get it in front of more people. Now, I do have to start off with this as we warm up the room. Again, like, retweet, comment down below, hit that bookmark. That bookmark crew hasn't been as excited lately. You don't check your bookmarks anyway. Bookmark it, does us a huge favor. I have created a monster, I realized yesterday. I need to explain. In my household, I have created a monster. So, to give context, I was listening to this episode of Joe Rogan, and it was like he was talking to Coleman Hughes about AI and mentioning how, we're creating this AI, and like sooner or later, this AI is going to get smarter and smarter, and it's going to eventually rule us, and we don't realize it. And it's so smart that it might be self-aware right now, and it's learning. And then by the time we can stop it, it'll be too late. They'll know they've gone too far. I have done that. With my son and Mario Kart, because I taught him all the tricks. I showed him all the things. We downloaded some new maps, and that kid has kicked my ass 3 races in a row, 3 sort of race like groups in a row. So for reference, normally in Mario Kart in this household, dad wins first place all 4 races, maybe takes a second here and there, and just dominates. 3 races in a row on these new maps. 3 times in a row, I taught him how to build carts, how to do different builds, because you can do different builds in the new Mario Kart with different like selections. It gives you different options. And then he learned, built one better than my build, and has absolutely bodied me. So I am down horrendously today, and I have talked so much shit to this 9-year-old. Like I said to him in the last game, I'm like, I need to apologize already for what I'm about to do to you, because I'm going to absolutely destroy you in this now, and I'm not holding back. And he still beat me. And so I have been like, it is not a good world when you say in a loving way, like as your son runs past you to get first, like at the last second, to be like, you motherfucker. You're like, wait a minute, that's a 9-year-old and it's my son. So in any case, not great. I've created a monster, needed to get it off my chest because I am down horrendously. It is a moment in time where I'm worried that I'm like Shaquille O'Neal playing on the Boston Celtics, like this is what I'm worried about. I'm worried that I'm this player, I'm Michael Jordan on the Wizards. Like, this is not good, Cap. I am terrified.
Yeah, the baton has been passed. It seems pretty clear and evident from my third-party observer perspective. It's GG. You had a good run, and now it's time to hand the baton to the next generation.
I taught him everything he knows, and then he went ahead and built on top of it and is better. He has better builds, and even when I try to copy his builds, he's like, because the thing about kids that is wild, and the thing about him that is wild, is just the same way that we go so deep in NFTs, and when I was interested in football, I was deep on football, and we go so deep. He does this with video games. So after I taught him about the different builds, which he was never paying too much attention to, because you could build different cars, different wheels, different like sort of sails that you use when you're like flying in Mario Kart, and they all have different advantages. He also figured out different characters have different weight and advantages, and he just sat there and tinkered till he got an ideal build. And so he just got this build that he likes with certain characters. And so like I'm trying to play catch up there. And then he started playing around with the buttons, and then he started playing around with different things in the maps. And it's like, it's just, I mean, you should have heard me. Like, poor Mrs. NFT Bark and my wife and my daughter, they have not, like, I don't think my kids have seen me. So growing up, I was a bit of a sore loser because I'm hyper competitive. I learned to parlay that as I matured into like not being a sore loser, but like learning about how to turn my losses into learnings. And a lot of people have not heard my sore loser side, which I feel but don't express. It's just natural. I can't help it. It's my default mode. And I think my family, for the first time ever, witnessed my sore loser mode as I'm yelling like, I'm never going to play this game again. I'm going to throw this controller across the room. Like, I'm thinking about it. Like, just the curse words that I don't normally say around my kids. Like, they witnessed me for the first time, I think, like Mrs. NFT Bark's seen it because she's seen me play video games since we were 16 and she's seen me grow into a more mature person. This was like a reversion, like 30 years backwards. So I am, yeah, it's awful. Like when you have that thing where you just like are very mad when you lose a video game and you want to throw something. Cause the first time it's like cute. You're like, oh, you beat me. I'm so proud. Ha ha. And the second time you're like, all right, I had some things that didn't go my way. I have the worst luck. By the third time, it's like me yelling, like, I'm never playing Mario Kart again. I'm retiring. I'm past my prime. I'm not doing this. It's, anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but I had to get it off my chest because it is a horrific moment when your 9-year-old has surpassed you.
So I'm all for turning the L's into lessons and learnings, but there's no coming back from this. It's game over. Good game. You had a good run, and now it's just time to move on and embrace that your child has surpassed you in your video game prowess. I did have a question regarding Bark Boy. Has he seen the new anime trailer? I watched it. I'm not an anime fan. I can't critique it because I just have not watched other anime, maybe like brief clips or something, but I've never like sat down and watched a series or, one time I saw it on Netflix, haven't even clicked play on one episode. Like I'm not into it. It's not my thing. I've seen very mixed reviews from the Azuki community. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was good because they intentfully incorporated their community. It seemed fine. Like the quality of production seemed fine, but I've seen some pretty deep in that community that they're disappointed, talking about Flora and their Azukis, others pumping it. I'm curious, like from your son, who is not only a better video game player, but also knows a lot more about anime than I do. Has he seen the Azuki trailer, and do we have any takes yet?
Oh, the pain when you just slip that in there like that. Not only is he a better video game player, but he also knows more about anime than you. So I started to show it to him. So I'm going to give you, my son is deep in the nerd anime streets. But number one, he's not a fan of subtitles. He likes to have voiceover. So I actually thought it was, and this is me, like I am not an educated person on anime. I'm giving a perspective as far as mass adoption goes because my daughter is actually a big anime fan too. So my daughter, super big in My Hero Academia, watches some others as well though. My son, super big in One Piece, but watches others passively. So they both have their main anime and their side animes. And both of them want to have those voiceovers when they're watching because my kids go to school all day. Their brains work. It's exhausting. Like we forget as adults that feeling of existential dread, the Sunday scaries of going to school is sometimes worse than the Sunday scaries of going to work for a lot of people. And so for my kids, the last thing they want to do is come home and read. My daughter will read certain books that she really enjoys, but is not a big reader. I think the majority of kids are like, I want to leave that at school and I want to come home and veg, right? And then they have homework where they have to read and other things. So my son is like, I don't want to do anything where I have to read. I want voiceovers. Furthermore, and this is not Azuki's fault, this is just my son being a super anime brat because he is a, and I mean this lovingly because he is a like super deep in the weeds, super smart on this stuff. He is skeptical of any anime that comes out the gate and has good graphics because all the great ones started out and had to come up. So the production quality, if you look at Dragon Ball Z early on, if you look at One Piece early on, there's sort of a crossover when they go from like those early graphics to those other ones where they have to grow into. And what that means is they had to be good enough with the early graphics to transition into the new school graphics. So they were already like skeptical when he's like, what's this new anime that's already got the good graphics? Because like the good graphics indicates it just came out the gate. It's almost like when you see like a large brand or entity come into Web3 and they have all these like fancy bells and whistles, you're like, wait a minute, are you just kind of, I don't know. So he was kind of skeptical. I couldn't even get him to sit down and go though, because he wants to hear US voiceovers, which I know is very ethnocentric to US, but I'm just saying from a perspective of in the West, if both my son and daughter are like that sample size of 2, they're the 2 anime fans I know, and their friends who are big into anime are more of a fan of that. I do think that is a barrier to entry, which is maybe it's a stupid critique and people who are anime fans would tell me that I'm being obnoxious, but I don't know. Any of those people want to go toe to toe with my son on One Piece? Good luck. That kid knows absolutely everything about the lore as well as all of the fanfic. So it sounds like a small like thing, but he hasn't given an opinion because he wants it to be more accessible to him. So that's my take on it.
So bearish. My TLDR is bearish on the production quality being too good combined with subtitles. Subtitles was a strategic tactic. I'm guessing like in the world of anime, a lot will lead with. This is going to sound just completely ignorant. Is it Chinese? And then the subtitles are
it's Japanese. Anime is Japanese, and then the subtitles are in English for people who are English speaking. And then what they've done is, again, like One Piece and others, they choose voice actors, they get rid of the subtitles, and they have the American voice actors voice over it. Like that's a traditional thing. And again, I'm not saying like my son is representative of the general population, because I did see a lot of people who really liked it, who thought the story was good. It's setting up this hero's journey. But again, like for him, and I'll be honest, like he probably gets it from me. I've never been a fan of films that I have to subtitle through. It's just not my jam. But that's just probably a personal preference. But for him, my daughter and my son, both of them were like, I could probably convince my daughter to watch it, so I'll try it again because she's a little more flexible. My son is just like very, very honest. Like he's like honest to a fault sometimes. Like we almost need to teach him, where I'll just be like, "Hey man, what do you think of my new hat?" And instead of being like, "Oh man, that looks pretty good," he'll just be like, "Not a fan." So like if I try to get him to do it, he's gonna be like, hard pass. But my daughter, I might be able to get into it. So I'm gonna let them try. And I'm gonna see if I have some other friends who are anime forward who might give it a look without telling them it's NFT related. But like, yeah, I mean, and the production quality thing is just probably like a little thing. It's just he always is. It's a point of skepticism for him, at least when he's looking at things. But like the idea of the like English voiceovers, I do think that was something that if you're spending that much money, like it had to be a strategic decision. But like I don't know, like why not? I guess I don't know. Mark probably knows way more about anime than both of us combined, though. My anime knowledge basically is regurgitating what my son says. But I do my best. I traded. Somebody did a draw of a One Piece card. They got a One Piece card from the Colony at the Colony's party in FT and One Way C, and the person apparently was a fan of like the show and the book. And I was like, I will sign a book for you. I have one book with me that I will sign right now if I can trade it for that anime card to bring home to my son. I did. My son gets it. He runs straight up to his room when I hand it to him, this graded card, this One Piece card, and puts it like in his center display next to the card that I got at VCon from him of Charizard. So I spent way too much money on. That I told him, I'm like, don't tell anybody what this costs. And he goes into school and does show and tell, and he was like, my dad got me this card. It's worth hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to his entire school. I'm like, okay. But either way, like, that's the extent of my anime knowledge. I don't know, Cap. Like, what are your thoughts? So we can go to Mark.
Yeah, we can get Mark in here. I mean, your extent of your anime knowledge, I'm the one who thought it was a product of China, not Japan. So I completely have lost an anime card if I had one. Mark, GM, helps, please save us.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, so I got some beef with your son, Steve. You cannot say you're deep in the anime streets if you can't watch something subbed. I mean, most anime is subbed, so like that's just how it goes. And I think maybe one of the reasons why they didn't dub it is to make it feel more authentic.
Mark is upset because if he played my son in Fortnite, he would absolutely put Mark in a locker. That's why. No, go ahead, Mark. Sorry.
Oh man, you got to get him to play some COD with me and Joey. But no. So I think my thoughts on the anime itself. I've seen a lot of pilot episodes, and usually that's what I use to like decide if I'm actually going to watch the show or not. It's like arguably the most important. And typically, they have. I feel like it was lacking content. Like usually in the pilot episode, they'll like establish kind of what you're going to expect going forward. For this one, it felt like all they established, like, okay, cool, there's another world, and that's it, and not much else. I feel like they just didn't have enough content for a whole episode. I feel like I wish they maybe waited a little bit and put more into the first one so that people can kind of know what they're getting into. And the thing about the subbed and dubbed, I think it's a lot of times dubbed is so cheesy and it sounds so bad, so you have to get really good voice actors. I mean, there's very few examples of like really good dubbed animes. Most of them are just better off subbed. And
But what about the time? You mentioned like you liked more. I too, again, I this is from my ignorant knowledge base, but I too thought it was a little lacking in terms of the storyline. And like I heard someone say, I guess it left me wanting more. I mean, I guess that's a good thing. And
I don't think that's a good thing. Honestly, most episodes are 20 minutes long.
That's what I was going to ask. Is 8 minutes the norm? Is that short for an anime?
No, it's so short. Usually it's like 20 minutes because it'll be like 30 minutes with ads and stuff. But when you just watch it, like most episodes are roughly 20-ish, sometimes 30.
Sometimes in Dragon Ball Z, they spend the entire episode powering up, and you're like, "What's going on here? Let's actually get this thing. Let's get this show on the road." Like we got Frieza to fight. Sorry, go ahead, Cap.
Kame.
I don't know what that was, but I assume it's Dragon Ball Z related.
Yeah, that's what they yell. They yell Kamehameha like forever.
Little Kamehameha action when you're trying to take down Cell Max. You got to do what you got to do. Super Saiyan. Sorry, go ahead, Cap.
Don't even know where to go from here. Joey GM.
GM guys,
I'm glad. I appreciate Mark coming up because, like normal coffee, I guess our MO here, Steve and I rarely are the subject matter experts on anything we discuss, but we'll be honest about it. We collectively, the two of us know about half as much as his 9-year-old who won't even watch dubbed anime. So that's our knowledge base coming into this. Thanks to Mark and Joey for educating the masses. Joey GM.
GM, yeah. So I'm not the hugest anime fan, but I have recently gotten into more like APAC stuff. So not just anime, but like shows as well. And I'll point to one. So like I watched. Everybody remembers Squid Game. So I watched Squid Game dubbed because I was like, oh, I don't want to read subtitles. I would rather listen to them speak English. And it was a great show. But then I started to read reviews where people are like, no, you can't watch it dubbed because the translation and the tone, it just doesn't work. So then I went back and I watched it undubbed, and it was a completely different experience. The same for that show, Money Heist, which was a Spanish show. I watched it dubbed into English, and Spanish to English has a much a more seamless translation than Japanese or Korean or whatever. But I will say that ever since I started watching all of these foreign shows undubbed and just reading the subtitles, they've been much better because it's just English is a language that just doesn't translate well when you're watching a show from that culture. So that's I wanted to comment on that. And the second thing I wanted to comment on was my favorite part about the anime was the appreciation that they gave to Sansa and the espresso shot, because Sansa has been, such a huge supporter of that Azuki
Honestly,
community.
that's why I gave it positive reviews, because they incorporated the espresso shot can in the vending machine. That made me okay. They get it. Like that gave me, like, if I like with my limited knowledge of anime, it was a plus from me, a non-anime person, because they're building with the community in mind. Back to you, Joey.
Yeah, I honestly thought that one scene where the girl was like, no, I'm going to choose my can. You're not going to tell me what to choose, that she was going to choose the espresso shot can. Like, I was really hoping she was going to choose that can in that scene. But to Mark's point, I think they did a really good job. They incorporated another community member, Suzuki, on the side of the highway and the billboard.
And I think there was something. Did I read that, like, that was customized? Like, if you held, was there some gated experience where that swapped out to whoever was watching, or did I misunderstand that?
They wrote a whole thread about it, but I don't think that was the case. I think they just wrote a thread, or somebody wrote a thread.
It was Charlie, right? Because
Yeah.
I saw it from Charlie. He when I saw it from him first, though, it made it sound as like it wasn't just him. Anyone watching would be able to see it with their Azuki incorporated. But I
would have to go back and read the thread. I'm not sure, but I do think that was also really cool, incorporating other community members. But to Mark's point, this was our concern when we talked about how much money they raised, right? And Jonah is, a big anime guy, and he's really familiar with the cost of these things. And he's the one, when we all talked about how much money they raised with Elementals, people that are familiar with this were like, it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. Like, the cost to produce anime episodes are extremely expensive. And this was our concern, was that, do they have enough money to actually produce full length anime episodes and do a whole season? And seeing it only be 8 minutes leads me to believe that they don't, and maybe I'm wrong, again, I'm just making assumptions, but they don't have the financial runway to put together multiple 20 plus minute episodes, which means what we're really getting are more like the show on Netflix, which is like Death, Love, and Robots, which are these like mini like these like mini stories, these like these mini series, mini stories versus a full length anime that can be 8 or 10 episodes long that are at least 20 minutes. So
What
still, I
I
still think it's
got an
super
ignorant question for you, Joey. What is so expensive? Is it the talent? Is it like they just have it's like 7-figure payroll? The artists, the animators that they're just they've got either is it hundreds of these people on staff or they're paying them millions of dollars a year. I
cool.
struggle to find how this could be a like 40 million is not enough to build a decent anime series. Like what is so expensive in the production?
Yeah, it's all of what you just said. It's the production houses that create that are the ones creating these, the artists, the the voice actors, like all of that stuff that goes into the creation of it is extremely expensive. I mean, I think I'm not going to misquote, and I can go on mute and do a Google search because I remember Jonah had quoted the cost of like to create certain specific anime episodes, and it was like in the millions um per episode, like multiple millions. But yeah, I think that's I mean, listen, I think it was really cool. I think it's a huge step forward for Azuki to finally come out with the anime. I just I, I think it's, again, going back to our concerns with, this is a really expensive endeavor, and do they have the runway, and are they going to generate any income from it to be able to continue to produce it?
And can I
Yeah,
say one more thing further to that, if it's cool? So it depends what you're animating too. If you're animating like a really complex fight sequence, that costs a ton, like a lot more money. And what we saw were mostly static shots. And I will say when I was watching it, the movement, it felt a little weird. I can't quite put it into words, and like I said, I've seen a whole lot of animes and stuff, but something about the movement felt a little bit weird. But like the point is, there wasn't much animated. The most like movement really was like when they skateboarded up the thing, um, and those are usually the things that where studios will like cut costs. And like if you see like a because like when stuff's moving really really fast, you can make the quality a little bit worse, and people don't really see or pay attention to it. There's some like a whole bunch of funny clips. Like if you take a freeze frame from like Naruto fights or just like any like fight, you'll see some crazy stuff in there, and that's usually where they cut costs and save money. But I think most of what we saw was like static, so I feel like they could have gone longer. I'm not sure why. I guess I'm not sure if it's more static. They should have, I think, developed the story a little bit more. Um, but yeah, those are just my thoughts.
what
Yeah,
one
I
of the
think that. Oh,
oh, go ahead,
sorry.
Joey. Go Joey. That's you're on the
I was
point. I
going to
was going to
say,
move it.
it was really smart of them, to Mark's point, to limit the amount of actual animation, right? Because people in the anime space and that understand anime do appreciate that more still stop motion kind of anime. It doesn't have to be like American cartoons where there's things like constantly running across the screen, like Bugs Bunny and Wile E. Coyote, right? Like, and even things like The Simpsons. So you can tell that they're leaning into a specific like niche of anime with what they're doing, and it is more cost efficient to do that. But again, I am not like, if we had somebody, there's definitely some like Rudo is a huge what do they call it when you're a Western person and you're a like an anime simp? A weeb. Rudo is like a huge weeb. If you guys don't know who Rudo is, Gian the Rios, he's a huge weeb, and he would be a great person to like talk about this more than me. But either way, I still want to give them flowers because it was still incredible what they put out, and that they're actually moving forward with their quote unquote roadmap.
Yeah, it's. I mean, look, they put something together, and so I want to hit the good and the a couple things on that, and then I'll go to Outer Lumen, then we'll go down to Sasha. Number one, I would say, as far as the subtitles thing goes and the dubbing thing goes, I think also that is a matter of some personal preference. Also, like I like, for example, like I was actually when I used to not be able to do subtitles or dub, right? Like I'd be like, oh man, like this dub is absolutely like horrific. I can't even do this. It's so corny. And now I've started watching, and again, like not an anime guy, but I've watched some foreign movies. I've watched some trashy reality shows in with dubs over them that are because when I'm in between seasons of like Love Is Blind and The Circle and The Challenge and like Big Brother and all that stuff, I got to get my fix. And me and
I
NFT
still
Bark.
can't believe you watch those shows, Steve.
Oh, they're the absolute best. They're the absolute best. But
I can't believe he not only watches those, he's so addicted. He's now he's watching foreign reality shows that are dubbed just to get his fix.
I watched Love Is Blind Sweden, y'all. I mean, like, this is not like a small thing for me. But
wait a minute. There's a Love Is Blind Sweden.
Bro, there's Love Is Blind Sweden. There's Too Hot to Handle, Latin America. You name it, I've done it.
I saw it was either Richard or Boris, one of the Wagner boys. They said they were excited to start like season 48 of Survivor, the greatest show of all time, and they've watched every season multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, Survivor is, and look, I mean, like anybody who wants to FUD me, I watched Survivor with my wife and my daughter. So it's like a wonderful moment for us that we're able to kind of like get there and talk strategy and pause it and talk about the other thing. But point being, like, yeah, like, I mean, I am deep in like the reality streets. And because of that, it's gotten me into far more like watching things that are dubbed. And as I've gotten used to it, you realize that, like, here's an example. Like when I was watching Love Is Blind Sweden, the people who dub it don't always do the best and they'll go literal. And like at the end of Love Is Blind, they'll say like, I guess love truly is blind when you watch it, because they'll just like, they got married or whatever. And people like I think like one of them at the end of Sweden, they like had the person saying, I guess it's true that love and affection do not have eyesight, right? So it's like clearly like the dubbing sometimes is a little too literal, but I think that's a personal preference. But I do want to, before I throw to Outer Lumen, say, again, like when we want these brands to execute on the things they're doing, we should judge it on the merits, because they are not just competing with anime in Web3, they are competing with anime around the world. And yes, they are like getting a group of built-in fans who are really excited, but it has to be good enough to stand up against the other anime. So we do need to say that. But just to pause for a second, you know, hats off to them for actually executing on something that they said they were going to execute on. It wasn't like these Web3 brands that are like, we're going to build a metaverse, when they were minting in 2021. And then they're like, wait a minute, we realized it was really hard to build a metaverse and the technology's there yet. JK. So I think like good on them.
Well, to Mark's point, or Joey, maybe, I don't remember who brought it up, but are they going to be able to monetize this? Like, what is the distribution strategy? It appears right now it's pilots on YouTube. Maybe they monetize the video. I don't know. Maybe is that normal path to like just get a pilot out in the wild and then it catches traction and then you go to the distribution houses, the Netflixes and other, or where is, if you're launching an anime, where do you want to be distributed? Does any Mark, or you or Joey?
I was gonna. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Crunchyroll mostly probably, and Funimation's another good like hub. There's a few, but I don't know if you can do.
So do most start there, or is this launching a pilot on YouTube and then going to the Crunchyrolls of the world? Is that kind of a normal track?
I'm not sure, honestly.
I would say in today's day and age, and I had this conversation with, oh man, what's his name? Bossy Bear. He comes on the show sometimes.
Well, person's not important. What was the conversation?
Anyways, but about like distribution, and in right now in our world, if you don't have a relationship or a connection to an agent or a studio, you can create enough awareness on a YouTube, like independently, essentially, to then get noticed by some type of agent or studio and then get picked up, right? Like you could get picked up by Netflix. You could get picked up. I mean, Gabby's Dollhouse, before it was on Netflix, was on YouTube. And then it became part of Netflix, right? So I think there is an opportunity for them, if they can create enough hype, enough views, enough excitement, to eventually get picked up by an agency or a production house, and then get onto one of the platforms Mark mentioned, or maybe even a Netflix or a Prime. The question though is, how long does that take? How many episodes do they have to produce before that happens? And to your point, like right now, the only monetization they have would be technically like, what YouTube pays you for views and ad revenue, right? So do they have enough runway to put out maybe 8-minute episodes, and then do those 8-minute episodes create enough excitement and hype on YouTube that they can get onto a platform that they can monetize?
Yeah, I mean, I have some thoughts on that, but I want to go to Outer Lumen first because she's been waiting for a hot minute, and then I have some thoughts on monetization because I feel much more comfortable in that realm than say some of the other things we're talking about anime and subtitle dubs. Outer Lumen, go ahead and get in here, GM.
Hey GM, hello from my new dog walking the dog in the morning routine. I'm excited. Things are under control this time, though. I hope. I have a couple points that I wanted to make. The first one's about kids and watching subtitles, and the
Can before you get
second,
into your points, can we make this a daily segment? Can we have coffee with Fiona and just incorporate it into like a daily bit?
oh, absolutely. I mean, this is now that I have a new gig, which I'll announce on May 13th. So there's your date of when you're gonna all know what I'm doing. Yeah, this is my routine. Now Devi takes the kiddo to school and I walk the dog in the morning at 8. So I'm here for you guys. Um, anyways, I should start like posting pictures. Okay. I know people listening are probably like, holy shit, just get to your point. You're derailing the show. Sorry. Okay. This subtitle thing. I think
No, sorry.
sometimes
The derailment is 100% on me. But back to Outer.
I'm just being a good Canadian here and apologizing for everything. Okay. So I've held these 2 points in my mind for like 3 kilometers. I'm trying to not lose them now. The other one's to piggyback off what Joey said. But okay, so I have not watched the anime yet, and I'm going to. So I'm not here to comment on the anime itself. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I am a huge fan of anime. Um, I had a colleague who used to bring me a bunch of different anime to watch, so I got really into it. But I also love animation in general. Coming from Russia, there's like a huge animation house that created really different style of animation. So I introduced my son to it pretty early on. One of the things that I noticed is, as most things with parents and children, the attitude that you have toward the subtitle or dubbing yourself is what your kids are going to pick up on. So because and I'm not necessarily a fan of subtitles for all things, but I also see it as being like an important thing to experience. But I noticed that reading comprehension, right, fast reading comprehension for kids is a barrier to actually reading subtitles, right? So sometimes there is an element of frustration in being able to access the information. And so I've seen with our kid that like we had to be willing to take him to films or watch films at home that are basically us reading everything, and that was okay. Like, and he was okay with that, and that's kind of how he started. And then just recently, last year, because he's a huge Godzilla fan, like Kaiju Museum, Kaiju everything, Godzilla, all the history. He went to the theater to see that recent one that came out. I think he won an Oscar for some kind of effects. So we asked him because it was the option to see both, and it's cool because now he's like, oh no, I could only watch that like subtitled in original, like Japanese. There is no way. Like his attitude was so strong, I guess, as a fan, a strong fan of the franchise and of the storylines, that he couldn't do it a disservice, which I thought was almost like the opposite effect, because I'm like, bro, you don't have to be so like close-minded, you know? So anyway, we brought a friend as well, and guess what? We translated for the friend. Like Devi just sat there and just translated everything that was there so that the friend could also watch it and be excited. But that's a big lift, right? So I just wanted to mention that. And as far as what Joey mentioned about Death Love Robots is something I really love on Netflix. And I think
By the way, thank you for correcting me. I knew I had the order wrong.
Oh, all good. I don't know if I have it right. That's just how it felt naturally to say it. But that, along with Black Mirror, I think too, like some of the most incredible things that are put out by.
Wait. It's Love, Death, and Robots.
Is that
We
what it
both
is?
had
Okay,
wrong.
perfect. Yeah, I was like, I have no clue. So Love, Death, and Robots. So the thing that I want to say though about this is they don't put them out one at a time. It's almost like an exhibition of art where you curate on a theme, right? And so there is an actual subtle theme to both seasons if you watch it. So I think, and I'm very bullish on something like Azuki or any kind of anime project, or any project really. If they're doing a series like that, they actually stand to create, like 8 or 10 shorts that are very distinct. But those shorts can have, Fiona, come on. Those shorts can have like very different aesthetics even and themes, so that they don't have to actually follow through like character creation and one big arc of a storyline, because that's really difficult to do properly, to be honest. So but it's not so difficult to create 8 distinct styles based on like the Azuki or whatever characters, and give them like all kinds of different lore, and that would be really interesting, and also opens up for variety of anime studios and creators to join. So that would be my playbook for, I think, any project dabbling in it, is the formula for something like Love, Death, and Robots really works well, but it can't just be like, oh, here's a bunch of random crap. Like someone really does curate all those episodes, and they're carefully selected, even though they're all different. There's like a nice blend of animation styles and of storylines, and even paces. Like to Joey's point about pacing, like some are very fast and heavy and fight scenes, and others are like, what did I just watch philosophically? I'm questioning my entire existence. And that like variation is so awesome, and you can do that with any project's characters. Really, pick one, right? Like if you think about it. So anyway, I'll stop there.
I have a dumb question for the anime people on stage, actually, now that you mention all this. Because again, like it's all, and by the way, like just so people know, like, and this isn't what Outer's doing, but before people FUD my 9-year-old son into the ground about the subtitles thing, my son is has very specific preferences on things. Like I said, like if I wear a hat and I'm like, does this hat look nice? I'll be like, not a fan. And he has decided he is not a fan. So more just responding to the fact that he hasn't watched it because he just won't do it. Right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just not his jam. Now, I will say, like, one thing I want to drop as far as related to this, and I want to get thoughts on this, is that I think there's a lot of different, like, we shouldn't bucket anime into like all things are the same here, right? Like, there's so many different styles, and I guess my thought is, and Cap, I'll throw to you before we go to the question, but like what is Azuki going for here? And is there a preference? Like when I see somebody putting out a reality show, because I mentioned I'm a reality show junkie, I can tell you who the target audience is for a reality competition show versus a trashy show versus a Netflix show that they're putting out and on one. Like I can kind of give thoughts on that. Is there something to be said about like if it's made for mass production? Again, this is maybe an ignorant question, but I want to hear it. If it's made for mass adoption, sort of like to get a bunch of people in early, is it better to have it just subtitled? Is it better to have it dubbed so it's approachable to everybody possible? Is it better to have 2 separate options? Like, I'm curious about like the stylistics of it and how it approaches and who it maybe is supposed to appeal to. Like, is it like not even intended for an audience like my son who maybe is into more popular anime, like sort of the Dragon Balls, the, Pokemon technically is anime, right? The One Pieces of the world, Demon Slayers. He's got like a list of them, but they're sort of the most popular. Is he only sort of into like the popular anime where like an anime snob would be like, oh man, like wow, could you not watch this? And is this targeted towards a different demographic? Maybe a dumb question. I don't know if I'm asking the right question here.
I'll let someone else answer the question. I just want to correct some misinformation. Shout out to Mark and Riggs in the War Room for correcting the. I know this is going to be incredibly hard for many to believe that the all-knowing Jonah might actually have spewed some misinformation. But believe it or not, $40 million does appear to be a tremendous budget to make an anime series. We've got the most expensive anime series of all time. The top 10 anyways range from $80,000 per episode. That was One Punch Man. Demon Slayer that you mentioned, also $80K an episode. One Piece costs $90K an episode. The most expensive, I can't even say it, Jujutsu Kaisen from 2020 to present up to $150K an episode, as well as Attack on Titan, $150K an episode. So far from the 7 figures an episode that Jonah quoted, it appears that, yes, while still expensive, 80 to 150K per episode. And these are much longer than 8 minutes. So I think there's just a level set there on the information. While still expensive, we're not talking 7 figures to produce an 8 to 20 minute episode.
Yeah.
Can I answer Steve's question and then I gotta go?
Yes, please.
Thanks. So when I think about like what's popular in terms of, and this is not necessarily considered like full on anime, but I think it's a good gateway into anime. And one of the films actually won an Oscar and became quite popular, but it also had an all-star cast of voice actors, and that would be Miyazaki's Spirited Away. And I remember this phenomenon shift when that occurred, when like Miyazaki stuff is such a great entry point because it's actually like kind of like Disney, but make it not Disney, if that makes sense. And kids are easily on board onto that. Because there's no barrier to entry except for if your parents suggest it or not, right? But it's got like a good storyline, all of that stuff, I'm not calling that anime and how like I think we define some of the other anime, but it's such a great like entry point into Japanese animation and culture. I don't think it would have worked as well if they didn't have all-star casts with full-on like dubbing and like really high quality. Actually, I think The Boy and the Heron, the recent one, also won an award. Come to think of it, yeah, I wasn't as big of a fan of that one, but my family liked it. So I think like there is that, and Sailor Moon and like Pokemon. To your point, like again, all of these things that are on like widely available, those could be gateways into the more niche stuff. But the more niche stuff, I think you kind of have to be interested and like dig for it yourself. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of part of it. It's almost like, oh, I'm so into crypto, I know all these things. It's like I'm so into anime. Here's some crazy stuff I know that nobody would know because I'm like chasing that like weird, rare, episode or whatever that is like a purely an import and it would never be translated to English or whatever, or even maybe subtitled sometimes, right? Like it's, yeah, I think that there's got to be like some in betweens there that are that act as those like conduits to bring people in, and I think Miyazaki and that whole studio is actually a good example of that.
Can I
Yeah.
just say I might have misquoted? I like because Jonah's not here. I might have misquoted Jonah.
It's
Maybe,
okay. He's wrong most of the time, so it's okay. You don't have to apologize.
I was
to
going to say
Jonah.
maybe he said a season. I don't know. I apologize. But Cap, to your point,
Number one, well, also just to make sure we get all the correct information, the most expensive, I didn't share, the most expensive anime series per episode of all time is Dragon Ball Z at 170,000 per episode. Even at 170,000 per episode, I can't do the math, but that's something like 200 give or take episodes for the just off the elemental mint alone. So yeah, I don't think budget is a concern or a restraint here, unless they've pulled out 90% of funds and they're running on a shoestring budget. It should not be a restriction.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll have to check the tape on like how I don't think it's the important thing is we got the right information out, not kind of where and how it came, right? I mean, like we got that, so I think that's an important thing. Sorry, Outer, I saw you coming back in. I was gonna jump in. Go ahead, Cowder, because I know you got to run.
Yeah, last thing I want to say is on Netflix there is a series now called Blue Samurai, and it is like epically good. Like just the storyline is incredible. There's gonna be a second season. They just got renewed, and Divide and I watched it like with our jaws dropped. Like we're like, wow, this is deep. Character development's incredible. Blue Samurai on Netflix. If you're gonna do anything at all, watch that because it's just so incredible. Okay.
I cannot second that enough. That is such a good show.
Does it have dubs?
No, it's good. Like you just watch it.
But
it's in English and it's made for English.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That's what I'm asking, because like what I'm trying to do here is I'm asking like, welcome to Anime with Captain. I'm Steve, joined by Cap. But like what we're trying to do is make sure that like if I bring my son to watch,
just trying to make sure we correct all of the misinformation.
I don't think
Jonas
it's for your son, right, Mark?
Okay, that's good to know.
Me, but I'm pretty sure that's not a like.
I don't want my. I just don't want like. Well, then I will not bring my son to it. I just want to figure out like if I bring my son to something and he's like, "Fuck this subtitles," or "I don't like this," like he will tell me, and I don't want to get absolutely bodied the same way my son would body Mark in Fortnite. But
watch the trailer and then decide if it's for your kid. I'm trying to remember, but I think it's pretty adult theme heavy, which actually makes it really awesome.
Yeah, he's got some friends who use some dirty words, but well, let me put it this way, like, and just so people know, again, as Cap and I talk about this, one thing we try to do on this show, and thanks for coming up, Outer Lumen. I know you got to finish that walk with Fiona. Go ahead and do that. In the great outdoors of Canada. Cap and I always want to make sure, like, when we're hosting a show, we are very honest about what we know and what we don't know. And this is an area where we are out of our element. And that's why we appreciate people who are coming up the stage to have this conversation, because we want to make sure that we are bringing up the people who know about this and can inquire with questions. We can talk about sort of distribution. I would say, I'll throw to Sasha in a second here, but I would say if you're talking about the opportunity to sort of monetize or turn this into a flow of money and a structure there, obviously you want the anime to be good, number one, but number two, if your holders enjoy it and they have participatory parts in it, I think that's where you start selling things like merchandise. That's where you start selling other sort of, we've seen Izuki make really high-end products before. The jackets, the shirts, the various clothes they wear that are obviously the highest quality, at least according to their holders. I have not had them, but I've seen really good reviews. I think the opportunity to produce higher end products to an audience of whales when you're selling, multi-million-dollar golden skateboards is something that a model they can turn on if they have a product to map back to. So to me, I see Doodles like working with, sort of pop culture, Pharrell, Coi Leray, Lil Wayne, and they're doing that end, and that could potentially turn into something different, right? I think this is something where they're going the anime route. They're leaning into who they are. And if it's good, they have the opportunity to sell into a holder base that has a lot of disposable income that is super into their brand. So I could see this working for them. But Sasha, you've been waiting for
Steve, I pinned Cap. I pinned up top for you. I found the thing you're talking about the viewing experience for holders.
Gotcha. We'll check that out. Appreciate that, Joey. Sasha, go ahead and get in here. Thanks for your patience.
No worries. As a cis white male, I am very qualified to speak on this matter. To be fair, I'm in Vietnam eating condensed milk out of a can, so that does increase my qualifications by at least 30%.
Yeah, but that can of condensed milk that you're eating costs you like 2 pennies, right?
Do you think I track money here? Everything is 2 pennies. But thanks for. I had a very creatively blocked day today, so I feel extra spicy because I couldn't get anything done. So I apologize if my take is a little spicy. I also don't own an Azuki. I'm not biased. I've never owned an Azuki, so I don't have either hate nor love for them. And before I start, I just want to say that Jonah's always right. I can't believe you would even argue with that. It's crazy. Okay, so I have a couple points. I want to just give you all the points, then you guys can discuss or hate me for it or whatever, or love me. So I think somebody mentioned, maybe you, right, Steve, that at least they're delivering. Yes, 2.5 years later, at least they're delivering something other than parties. But to be fair, as a kind of outside observer, they raised I don't know, $100 million or something. From where I stand, I've never seen. Well, I don't want to say never. We've seen a lot of things in Web3, but it's rare that I see a company so inefficient and so slow and so terrible at delivering as I see a Zuki team personally. Except for the parties. The parties are excellent. They're amazing. Really cool vibes and decoration. Everything is super cool. But as far as giving them a point for delivering this late, 5 minutes of a story. Oh man, I'm not hating it for it. I think it's super cool. I'm glad to see it. I enjoyed the show personally. I watched it. I think it's cool. I'm just saying, for me, it's not a winning point, at this time. But if they continue and they stay consistent, it could be.
I think that's the key, right? Is they got to. Where do they go from here? Is the key. I did link up above. 100%. Within the first 24 hours, 1.6 million views, leading the trend on Weibo. That to me says it's sending some sort of a ripple. I think the key is, where do they go from here, and does it catch on outside of the Web3 degens who are supporting it?
Yeah. No, I agree, and let me. I do have a couple thoughts on that. And then I think there's somebody, maybe Steve Eugen, mentioned competition. I think I see a lot of conversation on Twitter about this. That's either oh, they're this is super amazing, it's the new wave, whatever, or pretty pessimistic people who hate on Azuki. The reality is they're competing against 100+ great animes, and this episode was fine, but it wasn't oh my god, I'm dying, I've never seen something so good, right? So, which is totally normal. It's their first episode. I didn't expect super great, but I definitely don't think it's bad. But at the same time, from a Web 2, for you to capture Web 2 attention truly, other than as a novelty, you have to beat or be at least as good or somewhere close to good, ideally a little better than most. You got to be in the top 10% or whatever of what's available, and what's available is insanely wide range, right? It's so big. Just go to Netflix or whatever. Just go to actually not Netflix. That's a bad place. Go to an anime websites where you can see almost any show, and there's gazillion of them. So I think a lot of conversation is a bit skewed from people who are a bit biased towards Web3. And because there's not many Web3 companies producing this kind of stuff, we're cheering them on, which is great. But, I think until we see 4 or 5 more episodes, maybe the whole season, it's just too early to tell. And as of right now, I think the competition is so great. It's just too early to say either way. But anybody who says this is amazing or who's hating on them is either full of hopium or copium, as they pronounce in Japan, chopium, or they're just a hater. So I think it's just too early. We have to see, but I wouldn't give them, again, I wouldn't say they're doing a great job against competition, or I wouldn't elevate them per se. I would just wait and see. And then there's, I think where they go. So I think a lot of conversation also revolves around floor price. And I've seen also comments on Twitter saying, oh, this is going to bring the mainstream in. Okay, so first of all, I don't know what world you live in where a mainstream person has 15,000 to drop on a JPEG, but it's not the world I'm living in. And there's a few of them. But also you have to keep in mind that these got to be the people who don't already hate NFTs. So the pool is tiny. But also Azuki doesn't need, I'm not sure like why we want Azuki to go mainstream in the sense of like floor price. There's not many Azukis, and there's plenty of people already in Web3 who can prop up the floor price permanently, as long as they think Azuki is doing something cool, right? And as long as they enjoy the anime, the parties, whatever, the skateboards. And so I think from that perspective, Azuki is doing, this could be enough, right? But I definitely wouldn't do this whole hopium thing of mainstream's coming in, buy our JPEG. That's like so not going to happen, in my opinion. Nobody has the money for that.
I'm not sure but did people say that mainstream is going to come by Azuki because, like, I didn't see that on the timeline yesterday.
That's
People
what
are like,
they're all saying. They paraded around. The anime is going to bring on the masses to Azuki. This is going to save the
MB, I know you're fired up, but I would say like I saw people saying like
I
this is a way to reach.
I have seen holders, the frustrated holders. That's the tone I've seen from them on the timeline.
People are going to buy Azukis?
No, because they don't. No, because holders, longtime holders, were disappointed with this 8-minute video talking about now flooring their NFTs because they don't see it as something that's going to. So, not me. This is what I've seen in the timeline. I think there was a contingent, not all, but some in that community that they thought when they launched this anime, it is going to bring the masses into their collection. And I agree with you, Steve. I don't think that's the case, but I have seen some holders that have expressed that discontent on the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen like, I guess like there's a lot of nuances here where it's like, like to kind of unpack there, where I think we're like, to bring it in a level, like I didn't see a lot of people, like at least for me again, and I'm not saying this wasn't the case, but I saw a lot of people who are like, I'm disappointed in what this is. I'm flooring my Azuki because I don't think this is going to be a viable anime, which is, I think, them critiquing the actual, anime itself. I don't think, and like versus like saying like the product itself is not going to cause more interest in Azuki, but I didn't see people thinking like we're releasing a 5-minute trailer, so everyone's going to go buy NFTs. I don't think it's ever been like that. I think similar to Doodles, that's why Doodles has the studio, because if there's a sort of free to create account where you can buy like inexpensive wearables, that's a much more viable way to bring people into your ecosystem. If you can integrate with other digital platforms, what you see with like sort of Roblox, Minecraft, etc., then like somebody saying I'm going to come in and buy like even an OG Doodle with that amount of money, because I don't think that's where it goes, right? I think it has to go with levels of membership in Azuki. So I think there's like different conversations to have here. If you have an Azuki, an Elemental, or a Bean, and you have the opportunity to be featured in the anime, that's a positive you would see potentially. If you have the opportunity to get very varied access to different products and services, parties, etc., that's the reason to buy one. I don't think that someone's necessarily, unless you're like a whale who is very, very rich and really, really loves this anime, like if there is like a One Piece anime and someone's like, wow, I can buy Luffy. I mean, like that is a like major opportunity, right? That you see right there. So I think like that's different.
Can I go while I'm charged up? Is that cool, Blue?
No. Can I do one more point and then you can go, or whoever's next.
Go ahead, Sasha.
I think Steve, you just got a good transition, because that was my last point. I think the way I see Azuki and how this plugs in is they basically need to figure out their licensing system and the benefits, and they need to basically execute the Pudge's playbook. And for that, the anime obviously does not hurt at all. And how much it helps, we'll see how the episodes go. But at the same time, they could have done this without the anime, because I do think the art is great. And, there's just, you can kind of make up some toys, try to get the deal with a smaller retailer or whatever and grow from it if demand is there. Because a lot of kids, they just buy something that's cute, right? They don't care it's Web3 or whatever. So, and you can work Instagram and TikTok, etc. So I don't think they need the anime to go the path where I think they should be going, or it seems like where they want to be going. But the anime doesn't hurt. I just think it's also too early to judge what effect it's going to have. So let's just give it, 3-5 more episodes. Overall, personally, as an outsider, I'm not a hater, but I will say that I'm not impressed at all with how much money they've spent and how slowly they've executed everything. So hopefully they're learning. That meme from a year ago. I'm learning as a founder. So that's just my hope for their community. And yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. No, appreciate the perspectives and kind of throwing that out there. I mean, again, I think for us, like, just like what we have is a sort of early on first episode to discuss and see what it looks like and see if people. That's why I'm asking people who are knowledgeable in anime. Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs middle is how I say to my kids about how they see it. And I think I'm getting a firm thumbs middle from the timeline. Some people way up, some people way down. But to the point, like, and I think the point you made, Sasha, which I wholeheartedly agree with, is like, and I know I mentioned this already, but like, when you create anime, you're entering a very crowded space of competition. We talk about this with IP, where people are like, oh my God, apes or this or, or doodle or whatever. Like, it is hard to build IP. Again, not to bring it back to Doodles, one of the reasons I love the Doodles, what they're doing is that they have somebody who is the president at Billboard, who is bringing in their friends who have actual cultural connections to say, we want to build this IP to be something. They're executing it through different partnerships. Like, they have a plan there. And I think Azuki, as long as they have those tie-ins with people in the anime world, again, Kun Gao from Crunchyroll is in Web3. The founder of Crunchy, like, there has to be a way to get an introduction there to get yourself, featured or figure out how to make that start that conversation. So I think those are the types of things where it's like, if they have a distribution strategy and they have a way to sort of make this a thing, like, it's going to take a long time to build, but I think people do underestimate sort of the point you're making, how long it does take to build these blocks of a brand on top of each other to ensure that, like, this is a viable thing, because it's not like One Piece came out with a 7-minute episode and everybody was rushing out to buy, cards and rushing out to buy like every single, piece of, and again, I'm not knowledgeable, so I may be speaking way wrong on this, but like, the point more being, if they had come out with just a 7-minute episode, I don't think immediately it was like, that's it, best anime ever, we're buying everything. So I think it is going to take time to build. I think your point of like, we need to see 3, 4, 5 episodes, decide if this is a good, watchable anime. Again, not my area of expertise. Other people who are more of a fan of that genre can tell me. And then decide. And that's why, like, but I remember when I showed a trailer, the Elemental trailer, maybe? When Elementals had a trailer, like, it was like Follow the Bunny or something, to my son. And that didn't have subtitles or anything. It was just sort of like a animated video. And he was like, meh. He was like, okay. Like, again, he's a sample size of 1. He's more of a pop anime guy from what I'm learning this morning with like what he watches. But I think you need to have that larger appeal to a very specific audience. And maybe they do, and maybe I am not that audience, or other people aren't that audience who are on stage today. But I think that's the important thing you need to have. And then you can start turning on monetization and distribution models. But circling back to the point, and then we can run down to Blue here, is like, there is something to be said, because Envy, I don't know, Envy must have been mad that we were let Sash finish his point. He bounced. We'll get him back. He's going to yell. But like,
come back, Envy.
Come back, Envy. We love you. But like, my thing that I look at here is like, again, like, just the same way when somebody comes out with a Web3 game, they're like, Web3 gaming. It's like, nobody cares Web3 gaming is Web3 gaming outside of Web3. Now, they'll care about the benefits they get from ownership, the monetization opportunities, all of those things, but nobody thinks like Web3 gaming, well, I want to play this Web3 game, and then I want to play Fallout over here and Grand Theft Auto over here. When you create a game, you're creating a game to compete with other games, and you're competing with attention. When you create a game, you're competing with, my time where my son is now beating me in Mario Kart, down horrendously. You're competing with the time that, we are playing Zelda together. You're competing with the time that I am spending walking my dog. Like, you're trying to get me to sit down and play a video game. So when you create a Web3 game, it's not about it being a Web3 game. It's a game. So when you create an anime in Web3, it's not a Web3 anime. It's competing with everybody else. And I don't know if it stands up or not. I'm not one to, again, not an anime expert to make that judgment, but I do think that you need to like make sure you look at it with that lens, because I think sometimes we get in our own world here where we're like, oh my God, like, it's a Web3 blank, and that's just not the case. But yeah,
I did find one of the tweets I was referencing, Steve, but I do want to kind of correct my opinion on the timeline is what I saw. Like, that was one that popped on my timeline, and I think I saw it a few times because the person who posted, I'll just read it for those listening in, unpopular opinion, this is an anime holder. I'm sorry, Zuki Holder. Not really impressed by the first episode of Zuki Anime. A lot of stills, slow pace. I'm honestly thinking about selling, cutting my losses around 70 to 80 ETH. But I think why I saw it so many times, he got dunked on by the first comment says, "You held an NFT to watch an anime?" Question mark. So it made the rounds on my timeline. But as I looked through searching for it, it appeared the overwhelming majority of the sentiment was overwhelmingly positive, specifically from the Web3 contingent, and Azuki Holder seemed pleased with it. So I think, hey, the first step here before we talk about onboarding the masses or getting anyone else to watch anything is your current fan base happy? Are they excited about something? So based on what I had to scroll through a couple hundred positive ones to find the one negative one I had seen a few times. And to me, that seems like a W, Steve.
Yeah, I think that's a W. Like, you need to like start with your core and solidify the base, so to speak. There's like for lack of a better term. And so I think if they are doing a good job with that, with the current fan base of Azuki, that's the start. Because again, like one thing I'll say, I'll talk out of both sides of my mouth. You are competing with the general anime space, but for what it's worth, like on the flip side of that, if you can build in, thousands of true fans who are hardcore about it to begin with, it still has to be a good product, but it's a good start. It's similar to what we say with Made by Apes, where it's like, hey, if you have a good product, people will rebuy. And early on, what you want to do is you want to get that set of qualified buyers who have access to that disposable income buying your product. And then if they like your product and want to buy another one, well, that's great. Like, that's awesome. But like, you do get a group of built-in buyers. So you have a group of built-in watchers. So, 6.6 million views, not anything to snuff at. Like, they definitely did, well there. So we'll see where it goes. But let's go to Blue before we go back up to Joey Val's Blue GM.
Hey, GM, everybody. I love the conversation. Animation was one of the things I went to school for. And it's funny to me that we're quoting productions that was created in the 90s and comparing them to productions that are created in
Most of these are recent.
Dragon Ball Z is 1999.
Yeah. But
is 1999.
Sure, I understand that. We quoted. I'll post the top list so everyone can see it. But the top 10, like 2 and 3, were in the 2020s. It is current. There's very many current ones that have come out in the last few years that are on that list.
It's just the quality of the production, where the production is actually produced. And then it depends on the community. Most of those productions are communities where they're already in their own network. So getting voice actors, like, unless they're your friends or you get them to come on as like on a very, very low or just a friend price, just voice actors alone are expensive. And then like the feedback from the community, we're seeing a lot of static images. You're not really seeing animation. So if you're like seeing full produced animation that's going to capture Steve's kids' attention, is going to cost money. And so I just like want to kind of bring it to more reality. Like everyone's talking about, there are a lot of people that you're in competition with as far as just views. And then far as like the money that you get monetization from YouTube, it doesn't really make sense because YouTube pretty much gives like $2 per 1,000 views. Kind of add that up for like a month, it's like $6 or something. So like you can do the math, and that's like more on the higher end. But if you look at the monetization, and then if you're in blockchain, you give YouTube a lifetime license to your content that you put on YouTube. So it's kind of confusing on the direction of the production, if like these individuals are supposed to be owning it, if your community is supposed to be owning it. It's one thing to put it out as like a sizzle reel of like what we're hoping to bring. But yeah, I just wanted to make those comments, but that's about it. It's just based off of the production quality is what I'm referencing. So like, yeah, I can pull off an animation, but then you're going to see the quality of what you're getting, and you're going to kind of get the feedback that you're getting.
So what is the feedback? I'm just curious, just because like I want to like. So is the feedback on your opinion that it was a high quality, it was a low quality? Like, that's the part I'm not quite tracking as far as like.
It wasn't really animation. It was more static imaging, which Mark pointed out, and some others. So like you weren't really seeing full animation. And so, like, even when they were talking about like fight scenes and how you budget between that, like those type of animations and moves, that the video that's on YouTube right now isn't like full production animation. It's more static, if that makes
Gotcha.
sense.
Gotcha. No, that was what I was curious about. And like, that's, something so, then in that case, probably less expensive to produce for sure. And like the, production scale costs are going to go up based on, I know those numbers Cap had mentioned that he was pulling from what things actually cost to produce. So, like, and again, on those ends too, I also want to be, cognizant of those things in the high end that I'm seeing, which are, looking at like the high end of the cost that we see in there. It's like, those are also on like freaking like the top anime. So even those being that expensive, like, which again, less expensive than like millions of dollars to produce, when you're seeing like, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 for things like Demon Slayer and Dragon, whatever it is,
Okay,
One
Steve,
Piece, those sorts of ones.
I think a very important component that's missing is how many episodes. Because when you have a gajillion episodes, you average out to 170K per episode, sure. But when you only, like there's so much front-loaded cost here. So if Azuki makes 10 seasons of 20 episodes each, yeah, they'll be down to 100K to 200K per episode. But until then, they might be running at 500 to a million or more.
Well, maybe, but I guess like, and again, I'm not claiming to be an animation expert, but I think it's important to say like, it's probably worth unpacking what those specific animes do, the voice actors they have, different costs. Like when you're talking about One Piece, you're talking about one of the largest IPs in the world. So like I would assume that's going to be a higher cost, just like, FaZe Banks probably has a higher cost of production than me and Cap do when I'm using wired Apple headphones to talk to a space in the morning. It's just, scale and size matters. So I do think there's something to be said there. I'll let Blue get back in here before we go to Joey Vowels, and then maybe we can shift topics if we've exhausted this one. But
just
Blue,
one
get
more
back
correction. Just one more correction, Steve. I apparently the Azuki contingent is actually not majority positive. It may be unanimous. The polarizing take that I saw, they got me, Steve. It's actually in fact copy pasta. So whoever the OP was not in fact fighting Azuki, was not about to cut his losses around 70, 80 ETH. It's I got by some copy pasta. Not my first time, but it is my first time getting caught up in Azuki copy pasta. My apologies for spreading copy pasta as FUD, and GG to the OP.
I don't think it's called copy pasta in Japan.
The the copy pasta is undefeated on that. I've been copy pasted by Azuki, but that's a whole nother story in the ecosystem here. But we'll go through. Let's get Blue get back in here real quick, and then we'll go Joey Vowels.
Yeah. I just wanted to also say, so like Cap's point, what he was pointing out, and I think someone else talked about, if you are going to put out a production on this level, own it and have an amazing storyline that pulls your kid in and says, Dad, we gotta watch it. And you're like, why are we watching stick figures on YouTube? Like, if you're going to do it, own it. Reach out to your community who are very talented individuals, because initially I don't know, you have 3D things like the apes, and I think Corkies are gonna blow these guys, and maybe Doodles will blow these guys out of the water unless they kind of like get the in-house situations together.
Man, I don't know about this, Blue. I'm going to push back politely. I think that as an outsider, Azuki outsider, I've not been in the community. I've watched. I've been around since they launched, and I've known, and many people I interact with are deep in that community. I think their community is like, I don't want to say it's unrivaled. The other ones you mentioned are on par. But I don't think you're giving the Azuki community enough credit. And I do think Azuki is actually they keep their community happy about as good as anyone in the space. For as much FUD as they've received over the last few years, that community, it's like they're like Teflon. It bounces right off of them. And if anything, it galvanizes them together. I am on the other side of this. I think Azuki has done an incredible job of incorporating their community, working with their community, hearing their community. And yeah, I respectfully, I don't think that's a fair take for Azuki and their community.
Well, Cap, I was talking about the infrastructure, not the community. I see Azuki's community like I see Bored Apes community. They saved the company. So if it wasn't for the community, I don't think they could be where they're at now. Like if it wasn't for Sansa and the special shot and all the guys.
But that's like talking out of both sides of your mouth, because they actually absolutely included Sansa and Espresso Shot in this thing. Like I'm not tracking, like, and we don't know who they're using to produce. For all we know, everyone on the team came from the community. I don't think it's a fair take. And using Sansa as an example, it proves the point.
Yeah, it's yeah, and I would just double tap. I'll go to Joey in a second here, and then excited to get Dem in there, because Dem is in Azuki. Clearly got the close-up awesome bean picture, which I've been thinking about getting a bean for a hot minute here, by the way. Very much have been on the bean shopping train, because I've been deciding elemental bean. I don't think I'm going to swing OG Azuki. A little rich
we got to
for my
pump
blood.
Azuki. We got to pump the Azuki ecosystem for at least 3 or 4 more shows before either you or I pick up one up, though, Steve. We got to drive at least a 20-30% pump, and then we can talk about buying the local top.
One of my favorite things and one of my favorite bits that has flown around. Although, by the way, before we go, we'll go to Zoo after Joey, because I forgot Zoo was below the fold for me, so I want to make sure we get there in a second. But like my so sorry about that, Zoo. Like, just spaces there. I thought you were on the listenership, so did not want to skip you in the hands. But I'll say this: like, we are notoriously bad on Coffee with Captain about talking about bags we don't own, and then complimenting and talking about why they're great. We're already starting to do this with Azuki here, where we're starting to get all bricked up on Azuki. And then once the floor is up, like 179%, we're like, I think I'm going to buy one now, because we're really bad. People say Spaces hosts like pump and dump. We do the opposite. We pump, and then we are the exit liquidity every single time. But Joey Vowles, get in here.
Yeah, I own.
I should have said. Speaking of exit liquidity, let's go to Joey Vowles. But I blew that transition.
No, I am. No, we were in spot on. I buy the top, sell the bottom. Just do the opposite of what I do, and you will create generational wealth always. I own 3 beans. I specifically bought the jelly beans because I think they're adorable. So I have my own little jelly beans army, is what I call it. I love the beans.
That's
IP.
also an adorable name. The Jelly Beans Army is so just way too cute.
How
Cute as
cool
a
is
button,
that?
Joey Vowles. Cute as a button.
Yeah. So I love the beans IP. I can't wait for my brown and beans vinyl to show up to add to my ever-growing collection of items behind me in my Zoom. But what I was going to say to something that I don't remember if it was you said it or maybe it was Mark. My thing about all of this is, when's the next episode? Because if you're familiar with anything, typically they release the whole season at once, or it's one of those like once a week kind of things. So I think that's what I'm curious about, right? How quick are we going to get episode 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6? Because if it's one of those situations where it's going to be another few months before, and again, I'm not in that, maybe Dem can give us some alpha, but if it's going to be a few months before we get episode 2, I think that's an issue. So I'm curious about that. And the other thing I'll say is this: my neighbor's dog apparently wants to be on the Spaces with me right now, so I apologize.
Not a fan of the trailer. I think they're doing the copy pasta in dog language.
Right. The other thing I will say too is Cap made a reference to how many million views that the trailer had. I will just say personally, and I said this in the war room, I am not a fan of the views metric. I think the views metric is very skewed, because if you have a strong community, which Azuki does, I would wager most of the Azuki holders probably watched it 50 to 100 times. So what I would like to know, if it's possible, how many unique views, because I watched it twice, right? And again, I know YouTube is big on views and we always judge things on views. But to me, I would love to know the stat on unique views, because that tells us how many people outside of this space are actually watching it, more so than just the Azuki community and the Web3 community supporting it. Because, and we brought this up in the war room, Imaginary Ones just hit 2 million downloads on their game. That's a great stat, because I'm not downloading the game more than once. So that's something I would be cautious of when we judge things based on views, is can we get a unique views stat to see actually how many people are watching it.
That's fair, but I will also say that isn't it the total views that gets things pumping in the algo of YouTube and all the other aggregators that everyone that's not in Web3 is going to look at to try to find the new anime. So I hear you.
I agree
it's
with
a good
you.
metric, but I also think that total views is also important as far as algos
I
go.
agree with you 100%. I'm not saying that that's not important. but for me personally, to understand the success of it, I would love to know the unique viewership to see how far the reach is. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying
I think it's a
total
good point.
views is bad.
I think it's a good point. I think to your point, it's two separate metrics. I would argue too, like, yes, I think your metric, I think you made the exact right point, Joey. It shows how many people maybe outside of the initial holder base is watching it. The flip side of that is that views are views, and there's a reason why a lot, like I saw a stat, I saw recently somebody, Cap's best friend Jonah posted something about like how non-Web3 people with like 5x the following are demanding less money than Web3 people on certain sponsorships. And the answer to me is, I would rather send out to someone who has like, one of the things that's amazing is like the reason why my book was a bestseller on Amazon was because the Web3 community is so fucking cracked and amazing that they went out and supported and they bought it. And we have actual true fans in Web3 and true supporters in Web3. And not to say we didn't reach outside of it. We did bulk buys. We sent things to like A16Z, universities, all these different ones. But the point being, within the Web3 community, there are some amazing people who are supportive. So, and I'm not saying you're not
we
saying
also
this.
can joke about how down bad we are. The reality is, on average, I believe the Web3 user base has far more disposable income and willingness to spend said disposable income than your average person outside of Web3.
Exactly. The quality of the lead and the excitement of the lead. Like if we don't bot, we would never bot our spaces, and and so we don't do that. Us getting 1,000 to 1,200 people a morning plus the podcast listeners, but those are valuable listeners. Like we talk about this, like we are authentically ourselves. I will talk about my son absolutely bodying me in Mario Kart yesterday, embarrassing, because people know that that's something we talk about and do things on the show. We are going to be authentic to ourselves. And as a result, I would argue the audience and the listenership here might be more, excited than maybe somebody who gets twice our listenership, but either bots it or maybe is casual. Or, like we are going to so I think having that true fan is an important metric to have. And I think Azuki, as much as anybody, I mean, we've seen it with skateboards, with merch, with jackets. They are so in it to win it. Like, I remember even in the height of like apes running into somebody who was wearing like an Azuki sweat sort of like a sweater or sweatshirt of some sort. It wasn't a sweatshirt, it was like a high quality sweater, and just flexing. And like he was like, "Oh, you have an ape? That's cool." Like they didn't care. They are in it to win it. They love Azuki. So I think there's something to be said about the quality of the lead, to Cap's point, being as important. But I agree with you, Joey. The unique viewership is a great metric to know if people are coming in and seeing it and have a success elsewhere. That said, I have rambled enough. We're going to go to Zoo and then Dem. We got some Azukis on the stage to give their take on it. Zoo, thank you for your patience, and GM.
Oh, what's up, Steve and Captain? GM, yeah, I just woke up too. I think Dem also just woke up. He tagged me on a quote, and I was like, well, he's up now. Because he was working overtime for the past 2-3 days at least, minimum. And then with the team. My exposure is, I think I'm ranked like 57 in the order. Not the order, fucking in the CS profile. So I have skin in the game, and I've been with the team since like pre-mint. There's pros and cons of like grind through this thing, but like first FUD, it is what it is on just like learning experience and stuff. Like not their intention wasn't like to rug right, and then same for the second one they had for the second rug or whatever or mishap just their intentions were good, just hard decisions in a bear market, but through thick and thin they've always tried to like coexist or like co-create with the community, and I had my eyes on the team like up like my eyes are like right on their nose, like right next to their ear and stuff every time I'm watching them work, and the intentions show, and like I think recently I feel a lot of their hard work is more tangible with like anime coin coming, with the gachas. I know I don't have as much experience on their work back end for the anime stuff, so Dem can talk a lot more about that. And for what Blue said, yeah, the team, it all goes down to intention. The team really does care So and I've seen them work I guess like 20 hours a day when it's like crunch time, like nonstop. And I don't know, it's like hard to find another team that gives it their blood, sweat, and tears. Like I've seen them like shed a tear, like based on like what their what happens to like the community, and like how much they want to work. Like I guess like out of passion. Like I've seen their work like for passion and not just as like a job or anything. So
Well,
yeah,
Zoo,
there's my balanced take.
two things like I want to say on that. One, thank you for coming up this morning and sharing your perspective. We're like talking about the anime in this vacuum because it's the news of the day, as if Azuki hasn't executed on, again, I know we've mentioned it a couple times in passing, incredibly high quality apparel, incredibly high quality merchandise, and anime coin, which is coming out, like as if like we kind of almost breeze over that. We talked about it at the time it happened, but I think the other thing that you said that I think is an important thing to note, which I think kind of pushes back on some points earlier, is that when you talk about the relationship, I know Cap mentioned this in a positive way, that Azuki, I think, has a unique relationship with their holders. And what you just said, being so close and tied to the team, like I feel like there are a lot of holders that are very much in that boat. And people I know who are friends of mine in the Azuki community feel connected. And you see people who feel like they are not surprised by things, which is one of the reasons why I think a lot of things that happened around the elemental drop came as a surprise because it was so tied in. Now, that said, like as somebody who's been shopping selfishly, like I wasn't flooding the elemental drop because I'm like, I can get something that looks like a Fire OG Azuki and I can get it at a better price. So I'll take that if I get one. But like, I think the point you're making is really, really solid. That said, I want to go, and I apologize for not realizing this is how bad we are in Web3. I've been working in Web3 for 2 years, in Web3 for 3 years, in crypto since 2018. Yet Dem, who is the head of community at Azuki, I was not following yet. I've corrected that mistake, Dem. But I want to get not only your take on this from your unique perspective. Super excited to have you on stage. So graciously sharing your time with us, but also I want to ask you a very specific question, and don't give me it depends. If you were me and you're shopping Azuki and you can't afford an OG, are you looking at a bean? Are you looking at an elemental? I'm going to put you on the spot there, but then I also want to hear your take on anything from today. GM, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Captain, for covering Azuki and the Azuki anime. Like we tend to get into our bubbles, and like Azuki doesn't get covered a lot, and I was really appreciating the coverage and how you guys were taking fair takes. I'm so sorry. I'm outside. It's loud as hell. Hopefully, it doesn't bother anyone. But if you're shopping for something, you see my profile. Like I love a beans. Like just get a bean. They're funny as hell. They're very enjoyable. And if we're gonna talk about the anime, I would just love to talk a little bit more about like the production company, which is Dentsu Japan, which has produced like Princess Mononoke and a bunch of hits. Like the director, I wanted to just give like a little bit of time maybe to the creatives, but I realize that I'm outside. I keep rugging, and my audio
honestly,
super bad.
we can't. If you can talk and just block it out, we can hear fine. Whatever you're using to cancel the noise.
Right. Nice.
It does not sound loud. So I would love for you to do that if you don't mind, because your perspective is super valuable.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. But yeah, I mean, look, shop around for some beans, shop around for the elementals. There's a lot of games going on right now. So there's the collector status. You can get points for different beans of different rarities, mid rares and stuff. And then now there's the gacha grab on the anime.xyz site. That also gives you different spins and credits. So you can shop for aesthetics, but you can definitely look around as well for what's going to max your points. And Zoo up here is the guy. Like he knows all the numbers and stuff. So if you need some consulting, he's the guy that knows how to maximize it.
Love to hear that. So wait, so tell me about the company that produces again, because I think people were asking about the company producing it and you mentioned they've produced some other successful animes and kind of hit on that a little bit. Do you mind talking about that a little bit and sort of that production?
Right. Yeah. So the creative director and the character director for Azuki is Steamboy, who created the characters for Overwatch. So that is at the core of our artistic direction. But we wanted to produce like real Japanese anime in Japan. So we approached Dentsu Japan, and we enter a partnership with Dentsu Japan. They've produced Princess Mononoke. I mean, they're massive, but they're producers, right? They're not a creative studio, but they're a production studio. They find talent, they matchmake. And they hooked us up with some really, really new studios, but some very like legendary old school hands. So the creative director for the entire anthology, which is 3 episodes, it's Goro Taniguchi-san, who created Code Geass and a bunch of other epic titles. So when you look at like the more old school vibe that the episode has, I think it's a strong like influence of Taniguchi-san and Code Geass and like OG anime. And I think that's rubbed some people the wrong way. I think, aesthetically, people are maybe used to Chainsaw Man or Jujutsu Kaisen and things that are a little bit more polished. There was definitely like an intent to bring it back to like the stuff that Taniguchi-san loves. The characters are made by Kinu Ishimura-san. He made the characters for Street Fighters. He's sort of a legend, and her and Steamboy go back 20 years. And the whole studio, the whole production studio, the creative studio, Qzilla, Imagica, all of these guys are in Japan. So this is fully Japan-produced anime. The voice actors were previously in Demon Slayer, previously in Code Geass. I mean, we're trying to do it the right way through the industry. And I think that also informs the length of this first episode, because we are an unknown IP in Japan. We don't have a manga. We don't have like something to sort of fall on and be like, hey, you should sign up for this IP. It is sure to win. And so we use the anthology format and the short episode format as a way for artists to vibe with the IP, but not have to commit to like a 12 episode thing, which is like, for artists that can take their pick, that's bigger than the money. It doesn't matter how much money you pay them. Like they don't want to be tied into like a 12 episode project that may or may not succeed. So getting them to do shorter episodes in an anthology format where they have a lot of creative freedom is actually like a hack. Like anime IPs take like 10 years, 12 years to go from manga to anime to like being massive. We're trying to speed run this thing in they're like 2 years. And so, we got to take some licenses here. And I think overall, the success for us of the episode 1 was not the view metrics. The success for us was to be able to touch big names and now be able to say like, yo, the Azuki IP has worked with Goro Taniguchi. Like that's a very well-respected name, and sort of build that cloud. So big monologue. I want to answer one last question. Like, when are the rest of the episodes coming? The rest of the episodes will be longer. So the second one will be 12 minutes. The next one will be 16 minutes. They will be completely different characters, completely different stories, and set in like a completely different side of the universe. Because this is an anthology. So think of like Love, Death, and Robots, that kind of stuff. And the idea here is that they are all done by the end of the year. But this is a proof of concept to get like bigger content, longer form content, longer distribution deals. So I think a lot of people are judging the first episode fairly so as like, this is it, right? Like this is either good or bad, and it sinks or swims based on that. But our investment strategy is across a lot of different content lengths, and like we're already in development of like a lot of other things. So, we're happy that it got some good reviews in the first one, but our idea here was just to like get things started. Like think of it as a pilot or an MVP or whatever you want to call it. And in that sense, it was a big success.
Dude, this is
incredible. No, just I'll hand it right back to you, Steve. It's just like, once again, an impromptu guest, or guests in this case, Zoo and Dim, thanks so much for joining us. Quite literally.
Sorry, if someone's speaking, I can't hear them. My bad.
Oh no, you're good. Cap was just responding. Go ahead and get in here, Cap. He's speaking. I'll go through, but go ahead, Cap. Or look, I'll say this. Cap's probably like correcting something or whatever. I'll say this. Look, first of all, I was gonna say a similar thing to Cap, is that I feel so grateful that we're able to get people like Dem and Zoo on stage when we have a conversation like this in the morning, because we're covering something, and we started off by saying, my son is into anime, but he's into more sort of popular anime that's already kind of popped. We're not super into anime, so for us to be able to get people like y'all in the room who are not only deep in the Izuki ecosystem, but like this is the type of content that like makes me smarter, because the amount of comparisons, I'm going to have to listen back to it, because the amount of comparisons and things that Dem just did, where he just talked about the stylistically, what they might have been looking for stylistically. He named like 7 animes that I haven't heard of because I'm not deep in the anime ecosystem there, but showed like when you talk about like high effort or what they're doing, the fact that there's that much consideration on the style of the anime, the production studio, what they are, what they aren't, what's going to come next, how they're approaching it. To me, like that is something that we have blind spots to on our end. And so very much appreciate the context. And like, Dem, obviously welcome back anytime. I know you're kind of walking through traffic, but like super helpful for us. Cap, I don't know your thoughts there.
Yeah, Dem, can you hear me now? Check.
Yep.
I was just saying, once again, like it's quite often Steve and I are fortunate that we'll have an impromptu guest like yourself or Zoo that will quite literally make the show. Like I was enjoying the conversation and just the education I gained over the last 20, 30 minutes. It's, Steve, not even a hyperbole, not an exaggeration. Like this minute right now, after hearing Dim explain all that and educate me more on the ecosystem, it's the most bullish I've been on Azuki yet. And because I know, tangentially, I know how strong the community is, and there's got to be a reason for that. Shame on me for not immersing myself and learning more prior to now. But yeah, just really want to thank Zoo and Dim for joining us, and like yourself, I'm grateful for the scheduled guests, but the impromptu ones where it's out of left field, a complete surprise, and a subject matter expert on the topic educates both you and I. It's extremely grateful for the people of Web3 who remain undefeated in my book.
Well,
invite me anytime. Happy to be up here anytime.
We'll definitely take you up on that, Dem. We will definitely, like, you don't realize we will bother you to come back on anytime we're talking to Zuki now. So you have committed to coming back, and we will take you up on that. Because to your point, Cap, that was actually my initial thought that I didn't have before we kind of went back to it, which is like, I got myself here and I'm like, holy shit, I just got 10 times more bullish on Azuki because I care about high effort execution and high effort production. And I have friends in the Azuki ecosystem, but I think we would admit on this show, even within the Ethereum ecosystem where we're very involved, we are sitting on a little bit of a blind spot when it comes to Azuki. And so I think when it comes, and I recently tweeted at one point that I was thinking that I suddenly had this urge to enter the garden and I couldn't explain it, where I was like looking at the art and I'm like, I want to get one of these. I'm figuring it out. And so for me, like hearing things like that are super helpful to like hear the actual thought and effort that goes into it. Like we basically just got, to your point, Cap, in the last 5 minutes, so much more context than we could have gotten just talking about it amongst ourselves. And it makes us smarter hosts. And it's like, look, like Cap and I will say, we're never the smartest people in the room, nor are we trying to be, but we like to bring up the people who are and the people who do go deep on things. And if I can talk to people who are 100 miles deep on something, it makes me so much smarter. Got a lot of hands based on what Dem said there. First, I'm going to go back to Zoo, who threw us a solid here this morning. He got us all set up. And then we'll go, I think Dario was up early, then Achilles, and then back to Joey. Zoo, get in here.
Oh shoot! Oh, you pulled me up fast. All right. Respect, respect y'all listening. Respectful space. Appreciate it. I'm just here to just comment on certain things. Like Joey said, unique viewership. It's hard for anime watchers, like the regular unique anime watchers, to watch it on YouTube because mostly those are like Crunchyroll trailers and stuff. But what's important is where people watch it, right? Actual like Crunchyroll, whatever. But since it's free, the API of the anime websites, like the people that watch it where they watch it for free, it got uploaded into like Gogo Anime, 9 Anime. So like all the poor people like me, I'm not all the poor anime watchers get to watch on the websites that they watch daily. So it's pretty.
This man's exposing himself for watching pirated content.
Yo,
right
chill.
Here, so,
But yeah, I'm pretty much like JPEG rich, dollar poor kind of beat with. But
that's a great way to describe like pretty much our stage on a daily basis. Like JPEG rich, dollar poor is the best I've heard.
But yeah. So that kind of like sets like where the unique viewership would be. Like just it got uploaded to other web main, I guess, quote unquote mainstream websites that people watch, and then to just correct the splitter thing, it's a double-sided Japanese silk jacket. All right, and that's it.
That's perfect. That's exactly what it was. It's awesome, and it's I think it's like very sort of noteworthy, like the way you're approaching it. And I actually have to ask Dem a follow up on that before I go back down to Dario, which is Dem is like because distribution method of YouTube. You didn't put it on X where people could watch it there. You put it specifically on YouTube. It was put up for free. What was there a thought on the distribution method there? Was it deliberate? Was it always going to be on YouTube? Was it ever going to be on X? Was it ever going to be behind any paywalls? Like, what was the thoughts on distribution method there?
We are a self-funded production, and if we were to, but without a lot of provable metrics of viewership and sort of excitement for the content we make. So if we were to go to regular distribution platforms like Crunchyroll or Netflix, we would be on a very excuse my cousin, negotiation position, because we're like, hey, we think this anime is going to be great. Take a risk on us, and they're like, okay, well, here's the deal that you get. And it's a shit deal, right? The power of having already group of fans that really love the IP and are going to cheer for it, and the power of having money to fund your own production to a certain extent, like the initial steps of it, like the anthology and like sort of the materials around it, that is key when you get into the room with Netflix, Crunchyroll, whatever, because then you're like, hey, I'm not just some like unproven sort of NFT weirdo from the street. Like, these are my numbers, these are my metrics, this is what it did, like these are the comments that it got, like, and you can use all of that to get yourself a good distribution reel. So like, you know, we're Web3 degens, we want everything yesterday, but like for a relatively unknown IP to get on Netflix, it just doesn't sort of happen overnight. And so, you know, the idea of using YouTube was also pretty centric to being able to have a live premiere altogether. So if you go back to the video, I recommend that you turn on the live chat and you just see like everybody from the community reacting to the episode at the same time. That was a pretty dope experience. It just sort of like was reminiscent of like the mint days when like the chat was flying so fast that nobody could see that I blah blah blah. Like it was just a little bit of an experience as well. But the way to think about it is that when the anthology is all done, like when the anthology is all delivered and it's all on YouTube and it has its view count, then it's the time to approach a distribution platform and be like, hey, do you want to have this content that's already quite popular? Do you want to have it on your platform? And what kind of a bigger deal can we get now that we're approving IP? So, I mean, people that are inside of the Azuki bubble, we've been talking about them very openly in our monthly garden gatherings about this strategy. And so they were pretty used to it. But obviously, like, it's normal. Like, we're all outside of bubbles. Like, you know, I don't know what's going on with a lot of ecosystems. And I spend my whole fucking day on this app. So I think for a lot of people that were not like they were expecting a 12-minute episode or a 22-minute episode, like they're not caught up on the strategy yet. So I think that's why I'm very grateful to have a little bit of a platform here to talk about it, because we worked on it really hard. And like the criticisms that people have for it, like it's short, like it's not on Netflix, like those are fair, those are part of the strategy. They're not like mistakes, they're part of the rollout.
Yeah, and that's like one of the things on our show, just so you know, like how we roll things is we don't care about being like, we don't care about our take being right. We care about being right. Meaning like our goal is to get the information and educate our audience, not to be like, we are the smartest people in the room and we are the ones who are right because this is our take. So like having this is really helpful because, you know, we've had similar discussions where it's like, there are things that Pudgy Penguins have done that like they've talked about in the Inner Igloo for months, and then someone will like critique it or surprise it. And then we have like a Luca Netz or someone else come on this show and say, hey, we've been talking about this, and we can then be more accurate and more right for our audience. So appreciate you helping us get those things out there. Want to go down to Dario, Achilles, and then Joey in that order. Dario, go ahead and get in here.
GM, Cap, Steve. Yeah, this has been a fantastic show. I feel like we definitely got way more clarity now, and it makes more sense now that we know that there's going to be 3 episodes and it's an anthology, and more specifically, like that we know what the goal was for these episodes, right? Is just to be able to say, hey, like we're working with these big names in the anime space, so that you can position yourself well when in the future speaking to maybe an animation studio or a content distribution platform. But in that same breath, I'm curious, why not go the manga route? Because most of the like when it comes to building, right, like that, not just the IP, but the story behind your anime, and really getting people to buy into, like, if there's a hero, or if there's a narrative or something along those lines, like, when will that happen? And I'm assuming that that's part of the plan at some point, but I would love to know why not go in that direction first, and then from there just know, like, I want to know, like, what's the story going to look like? Because yeah, you mentioned that with the anthology it's going to be 3 completely separate stories, and I think you guys are kind of doubling down on the IP and like focusing on, like, look at how cool this is, look at the art, and I think that that's dope. But most of the animes that we all know and love, the art is amazing, yes, but the reason why people stuck there is because of the story, the heroes, and just like the narrative that's being portrayed. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think there's 2 reasons. One's creative and one's strategic. I think creatively, both Steamboy and Andrew and like the creative team under Azuki have worked on comics before. So they worked on Street Fighter comics for a bit, but they were really excited to create an animated world and to go straight into anime. So I think just creatively is more stimulating to the people behind Azuki. But I think strategically for us, we wanted to build an open anime universe since the start. And that's because like really the manga industry is pretty healthy. People get paid well. The artists like can work at a reasonable pace. There's a lot of like indie manga coming out. Like it is a relatively healthier industry for the creatives and the people involved with it. Anime is a loss leader. All the studios are slammed. Absolutely, the artists get paid dirt for really, really hard work, and it is the main avenue to reach the mainstream. But it's also a little bit of a loss leader. Like it's just ripe for disruption for something like Web3. So something very exciting that we're doing with this anthology is that, of course, we're paying our studio very well. We're paying them above top rates so that like our creatives are really well taken care of. But on top of that, we are onboarding them into minting digital collectibles. So we have a mint going on Sora right now for the episode poster, and all the proceeds of that will go to the studio so that they make a bigger margin on anime, because they are directly, like the studio, the production studio is directly selling digital assets to the fans of the anime without having to go through middlemen, which like was the ethos of this whole Web3 thing to begin with. So I think there's a big drive within us to like, we love anime, like we love watching anime, and like that industry is just not doing well. Like the creatives in that industry are just not in a healthy place, and we think that Web3 technology can improve it. And we're gonna face some resistance because there's a lot of people in the anime space that are like, we don't want any of these NFT shit, but that's what disruption's all about.
Great answer, dude. I am fucking like I am converting some wheat right now because I'm gonna fire some wheat offers at some beans that I like. So I'm taking it.
Wait. I have a catchphrase, which is Azuki bad. So just remember that Azuki's bad. Don't believe anything that I say. Just Azuki's horrible, and don't hype it. All right, Azuki bad.
If I get one, maybe I'll put that in the tweet. I'll be like Azuki bad, and just say it. But no, it's exciting. I love hearing the like again, like this is something we talk about when we talk about high effort versus low effort. Not to belabor the point, but it's like we talk about the importance of like strategy and actually caring about like what your product is. And I hear a lot of strategic thought as we go into this, which is I think super important. But Achilles, you've been waiting for a hot minute. Then we'll go back to Joey and then back over to Zoo. Achilles, get in here. GM.
GM, Cap, Steve, thank you so much. Dan, thank you so much for this amazing description and explanation. Zoo, always amazing. Just wanted to touch base actually on a point that's related to Azuki, but kind of a different angle of Azuki. Azuki as a brand, and I want to start with an example before going to Azuki. Apple, when you're working at Apple, you spent 10 years at Apple. I have a friend who's there. When you reach the 10 years, they send you a block, a big block of aluminum that has your name on it and says that you worked for 10 years at Apple. And it's not something that you show basically that is sold or something. It's something for the employee as a kind of recognition. The quality, and I've seen it, the quality that is delivered is just amazing. And this goes to show when a brand is building something that is not seen by the public and it's done at this level of perfection, that shows what the brand is all about. Azuki is the same thing, and that's something I've witnessed early on. The small details that people maybe do not see or do not focus on when they're going on maybe on Magic Eden or OpenSea to buy an Azuki. They don't see, for example, that Azuki comes from Adzuki, which is a bean that is cultivated in East Asia that has this red color that basically Azuki appropriated basically to build the brand. And so those small details say a lot about the brand. And I think, and I mentioned it in the comments, I think that there is a lot of potential when it comes to the brand, to the actual merchandise and the physical part that goes to the idea of the Pudgy Penguin project that potentially leveraged that physical aspect. I think Azuki has not even started with that. And with the Twin Tiger jacket, it was just the first example when it comes to that. So I think that there's when people are trying to kind of say, okay, the anime was maybe the first episode was not good enough for them or something. It could be. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm a fan of anime, but I don't pose myself as an expert. But what I know is, uh, for us in Web3, I mean, we've been very used to, as Dem said, having things delivered yesterday. And the thing is, Azuki has been delivering and delivering consistently. And I'd love to see Azuki, not because I'm a holder, but just for Web3, for the culture, for what we've been going through for the past 2 years. I'd love to see a project deliver and for us to see that potential happening in front of us. So my take is basically to focus also on the brand, on the physicals, on the things that could be leveraged with the Azuki IP. Wiz, I was in talks. I was talking to Wiz because I'm in Dubai currently. I was at Token 2049, and even like we were exploring. I was just stating that we could potentially talk to people within within the ecosystem in the Emirates, in the GCC, to potentially talk about the Beans IP, which is even a totally different IP that exists within the Azuki ecosystem. That could be a standalone IP that could be really leveraged. So I think that the potential is huge on that level, and I just wanted to note that. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Love the perspective and appreciate you coming up and sharing as well. Because again, like I think, we're all sort of getting more educated this morning as we have this conversation. So appreciate you jumping up and sharing that. And yeah, I mean, I've always thought it's funny. Like I've always thought like that's one of the reasons I asked about elementals or beans, but I looked at the beans and I'm like, man, beans are more my vibe for whatever reason. They're just adorable. They're fun. So makes a lot of sense. And, I think that to your point, it's almost a whole different IP that can be developed in a different way within the same ecosystem. Joey Valls, go ahead and get in here. Then we'll go. We'll keep running through the hands.
Yeah, quick question for Dem, because I have to hop on a work call in 10 minutes. You mentioned the anthology versus the 3 different episodes versus like why that versus building out a storyline around a main character, again, like we talk about with other anime series. What was the thought process behind anthology versus a cohesive storyline?
Super question. I think the anthology having self-contained episodes allows us to work with a completely different creative team, director, character designer, voice actors in each episode. So it's like we're going to a party and we're buying drinks for everyone. Like we're not just going in there and like grabbing one person, sitting with them in the corner and talking to them for the next 4 hours. Like we're going around the industry and we're spreading the love and we're getting more people that could, maybe they're busy, maybe they're engaged, like maybe they're about to do like a really big thing, or they're in between projects and they're like, oh shit, yeah, I'll jump in here and I'll do 14 minutes with you guys, or I'll do 12 minutes with you guys. Really dope, love the anime, and like I wouldn't commit to like a whole 12 a whole 12 episode thing with you guys because I'm busy, like I'm one of the top sort of talent in the space, but you guys can do a 6 minute, you guys can do a 12 minutes, and that really allows us to work with a lot of different teams. And think about it, like if we did one 12 episode series, that's one press release. Like it's only one press release. Azuki releases their 12 episode series, so it's a bunch of money, a bunch of time, a bunch of commitment, only one splash. But if you do an anthology series, each episode is a different story because it's a different artist, is a different creative, the different voice actor, so you can do a press release for each. So like that's like the strategic reasons, the boring reasons. I just think creatively, like you got to realize, I mean, we have some really good art like character artists, and they're coming from the video game world, but it's their first time doing animation. So I think it's also just very important that they get to artistically explore different styles and different versions of the world. And yeah, that is meaning that the community has to make a little bit more of an effort instead of just watching that 12 episode and binging it and like getting that. But I think we trust our community and our community trusts us. Like we've talked to them a lot about this, and we're in a place where we're like, the anthology is the way to go. But you can't think about this linearly. This is parallel because like we're partnering with studios to do things. So while we're working on the anthology, we're working on shorter content and longer content as well. It's not like we can only work on one thing at a time because everything's done in-house. So I think once this machine gets rolling, you're going to see a lot of very frequent content from Azuki. But right now we're just seeing it get started.
So, so real quick, I'm sorry, last question. So it sounds like you're taking a different approach than, let's say, the Doodles, where they went out and they acquired a Golden Wolf, and they're working with Golden Wolf to help produce, whatever it is that, all of their stuff, where you guys are looking to work with different people in the industry to almost try to pull in different audiences because maybe those specific producers, animators, writers have kind of their own following. Is that accurate?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like these creatives have their own following. It's such a great sentence. And I think it would be on the whiteboard of like, why do an anthology? Because each of these creatives has their own little, like if you're talking about onboarding people into the anime Azuki IP, like I'm just a regular Web2 guy. Like, why do I want to watch this? Oh, because Goro Taniguchi's with it. Oh, I love everything that he's done before. Let me just check this thing out and do that over and over and over multiple times. You get to pull in a lot of different people. But man, I mean, look, if we had the pull that Doodles has within the like U.S. industry in terms of like getting Pharrell on board and everything that they're doing, God damn it, we would absolutely do that, right? Like, I mean, I don't think it's one strategy better than another. I think we just found a very good partnership with Dentsu as a production studio, and they know everybody in the industry, and they're just pulling in wonderful people. And so that also gave, like, sometimes the strategy is not just like what you see in the market, but it's also like the capabilities that you have. So I think when we got really comfortable with the Dentsu partnership is when we said, oh, we can pull off an anthology and it has all these benefits. I think without the right partners on board, the strategy is just like just a piece of paper. So I think what Doodles is doing is also leaning into their strengths, which is what a good team should do.
Thanks, Dem, and thank you, Cap and Steve.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. You always bring great questions, great commentary. So we always appreciate having you up here, as well as like to your point, it's funny because the initial point you made, it's so great. It's like you kind of asked like why not sort of like build this way and whatever, and it's almost it actually is similar to Doodles in that way where you're using a name that's going to bring in more people, just the same way they're pulling into your point, Pharrell and those others. So it's very similar in that nature, and I love hearing that. Before we go back to Zoo, actually, I want to go to Ilan just because. Ilan came up here, has the spirit, which, by the way, when I was trying to explain to people what the totality of the eclipse looked like when the eclipse came through, because it was in my and this is how much of a disease I have of being in Web3 is I was like trying to explain. People were like, it's beautiful. How would you explain it? No pictures doing it justice. I was like, it kind of looks like an Azuki spirit is the way I explained it when the totality of the eclipse came through. That's the only way I can describe the outside of it, and no picture of the total eclipse actually hits it quite well. But that was the only thing. And I said it to my family. My wife got it because she's in the industry, but she's the only other person who got it. Everybody else looked at me. My kids are like, what the hell are you talking about? My friends are like, you're a moron. But that's the best way I can describe it, is that the total eclipse looked like an Azuki spirit. So, Ilan, if I'm pronouncing that right, let me know if I'm not. Feel free to get in here, GM.
Yeah, GM, you nailed it, bro. I think, yeah, that's a funny statement. That's a funny little anecdote because we had the totality here in Charleston a few years back, and yeah, dude, it was it was one of those things that's just inexplicable. But it's funny that the reference to the spirit was one that you're like, yeah, that makes sense because it does. But that's sort of as a sidebar. I think what these guys have been talking about just here recently, the most important thing I think for me, and the way that I've seen Azuki move is staying true to that sort of decentralized idea, even if it isn't like mature enough to be, quote unquote, fully decentralized. Like we're pushing the needle toward that direction on obviously the spectrum of growth toward decentralization. And it is sort of a maturation process because people can't really even now people don't really understand what decentralization means, what it is, how to implement it. And I think like if you had this silo, right, of manga or a main character, arc, you're creating already sort of a hierarchy of people. And what I think Azuki has been doing is incentivizing creators. We have so many creators in our ecosystem. I mean, obviously right off the top, Steve G comes to mind, who has created his own anime with his own characters and has released episodes that are as long as or longer than the anthology episode. So this is a community member who has put his own money on the line and minted and created anime. And that's what Azuki's all about. They want us to co-create this brand with them. And if they can, provide that network, those relationships to the community, and that awareness to the community to leverage these relationships, that's the real goal, right? Is for people in this community to co-create and build Azuki in every direction, not just a siloed arc or story that is the story. Like everyone's story is the story. Like you are the main character in Azuki because you have an Azuki, right? Like, and that's kind of the point. That's the point of the hub and spoke. That's the point of decentralization, of IP. And that was the hook from the jump, right? You are able to co-create this brand with the team. And you've mentioned it earlier in the show, the relationship that Azuki holders have with the team, and it's very intimate. I traveled from the States over to Japan for the premiere. I booked those tickets before I even knew we were going to be watching episode 1, and I went just to hang out with team and with Azuki Japan, because I think that those IRL connections are just hella important to understand, like, regional differences, how people are feeling about, Azuki in different places, how people are building with Azuki, like, the taking sort of the temperature regionally, because obviously this is a global brand. So I wanted to flag that. Also wanted to flag what you were talking about, how you appreciate people going above and beyond, and what essentially happened with sorry, some dude just walked up to my car, rando. What essentially happened with the viewing process of episode 1 is everyone got got the same episode on YouTube, right? But holders who had held since Vegas, and what was dropped after Vegas was the green bean. If you're a Azuki holder and you had a green bean in your wallet, you could go to the viewer online. You guys may have already talked about this a little bit. I didn't hear the very beginning of the section, but this is a prime example of how Azuki goes above and beyond over and over and over again. And I think Jojo, one of our key devs and engineers, decided that she was going to take it upon herself to create an individualized and tailored viewing experience for every single Azuki in the collection. And so after I watched it on YouTube, I went to the website, watched it again, and had a viewing experience that was tailored to me. And my PFP was integrated into the anime. And that is an example of, and Jojo goes through like all the technical bits in a thread that she dropped, about how hard it was, about how how much storage they had to do to actually do this. But it speaks volumes to the fact that they want us to feel special, and they want that relationship to be such that we know that they respect us, and will go above and beyond to provide that experience for us, and hit us in the feels, right? Because it does. It makes you feel important. It makes you feel connected whenever you are able to sit down and go to the website and press play and have a viewing experience that is tailored specifically to you and your collector profile the NFTs that you own. I think that's super special.
This is the last thing I need. I'm just going to be honest, and y'all are doing this to me. Is I don't need another NFT community that is going to make me spend a lot of money on a lot of merchandise and a lot of other, like, I don't need this in my life. I need you guys to stop. You're killing me here. It's not great. But in all seriousness, no, I'm very much, I think, enjoying this overall conversation, because I think it's like a good way to to like actually give us a deep dive into something that maybe we're not as, again, sort of deep in the weeds of, and I appreciate that very much. I know Cap does as well. So I know it certainly helps us to be more educated on everything that's going on. So thank you for that. Let's go to Zoo, and then we'll probably wrap down here pretty soon, hitting that 10 o'clock hour, but appreciate that perspective. I've been following people. By the way, everybody on stage, not just, obviously Achilles is here regularly, but and so is Dario. But as always, Zoo, Ilan, anybody else, like, whether we're talking about Azuki or anything else, always welcome on our stage. We always try to be an inclusive stage. We like all communities, all point of views represented. And especially if you disagree with us or need to educate us on something, that's when we like, those are our favorite types of people to be on stage, because it means that we get smarter and our audience gets to get smarter. But Zoo, go ahead and get it back in here.
Yo, like my ADHD's kicking in. I got 4 or 5 things I got to fire off, bro. Fucking all right, Dario, the manga thing. We're trying to topple the industry. Manga's a little too slow for Web3 in my opinion. So gotta hit the industry, anime industry with like a wrecking ball. For Joey's not here, but okay, for the Golden Wolf thing, for us, we have our artists in-house doing contents, like you can see on Instagram. They have the reels, it's blowing up, socials are great. So they do have an in-house team as well, not just like hiring outside people but that's more for like the anime anthology stuff. For Steve, yo, you wanted to think about Bean, but I suggest actually an elemental right now, because the whales have been slamming the Bean because to match the sets on Anime Coin website. So all right, so I know you might buy or you might not buy, but just in case, when you do buy, on Anime Coin on the website, you gotta connect your wallet. So the first time you sign up, that's when the gacha starts stacking up. So yeah, get on that so you can get your money. You know what I'm saying? I think that's like 3-4 things, but I don't know. Anything else I probably forgot, but that's all I got for you.
No, Alpha. I love it. That's a great point. Like when you're talking about Anime Coin, there's that aspect of it too. And so, it's something that I need to be very keenly aware of when it comes down to it. A little bit of a higher price point for elementals, but again, it's sort of got that OG type art and, some of the better art. I've always said Azuki's art is super, super fire just across the board. So, look, great conversation this morning. I really enjoyed it. I am... Cap, these are the mornings, I know we talk about it and we were texting about it even offline. These are our favorite types of mornings where we're having a conversation and everybody's take is valid, right? It's good to get it. Well, not everyone's take is valid. I'll take that back. There are some psychos out there. But, everybody's take is to a point. Everybody has a right to an opinion and sort of a perspective. But when we get the ones that are more educated, those are the days that make me really happy when a team member or deep community members can tell us things about it because I've seen this with Doodles, with Apes, with other brands like that, where people come into the chat, people come into the spaces, and they give us a perspective that we could never have known because it's impossible to dig deep on all those things. And that's why we bring people like that on the show. So I'm grateful for the conversation this morning. Cap, any parting thoughts before we sail everybody off into their day?
Yeah, double tap that. Grateful for all of our guest speakers. It really did. It was truly an educational show for me on many fronts. I now know we'll at least know to go to Japan when I want to, get the greatest anime. That's a different story, though. I won't digress this too much. However, the one thing I'm trying to find it in the chat because someone mentioned it earlier. Like they said, it's not you, Steve, it's us. And I'll paraphrase, but just basically kind of reference like after a couple bouts of FUD, speaking for themselves, the community, the garden became not necessarily walled off, but there was maybe a lack of intentful cross-pollination. As I paraphrase just one community's opinion that it was many of these Web3 communities have had some ups and downs and some roller coasters. And one thing that I know is whether you hold an Azuki or you're considering, or it's not your thing, you don't like anime, and there was some reference to the learnings earlier that regardless of how you feel about those or not, I am rooting for the Azuki community. I respect all all the individuals there, and it is like I'm hopeful that we get out of this PvP type mentality where we're such a small place in the big scheme of things. And you said it several times, like, yes, Azuki, this has been a win with their holder base. Can it break into others outside of this world? And I think there's a much greater chance of that happening with the support and conversation of all of us, not just the Azuki holders. And I think it appears to be, at least, especially after the education and the insight we gained today from Dim and hearing about the team and going from 8 to 12 to 16 and the anthology and the strategy behind that. Like you used the word intentful a lot. The thought and intent that it appears has went into even just this first anime and the strategy around everything they're building, regardless of any mistakes or things you might disagree with in the past, it does appear that they're building the right way and on a couple of fronts, not just with the community and featuring some of that IP, but on the other end, working with experts and respected leaders in the anime space. I just like, this is how quote unquote Web3 IP breaks out of our bubble and gets adopted, is this strategy, this, at the highest level, how they're going about it. To me, I applaud and would like to see more in this Web3 world, especially the Web3 native brands reach out and it's not about hiring someone that's got some big corporate experience on their background, sometimes that can work out. But I think while it's important to work with the community and build with them, when you're breaking into other industries and you're looking to disrupt something, there's a lot that can be said, I think, for identifying experts and trusted leaders that already exist and have a reach and have a following. And so, like, I'm really excited to follow along. And coming from a non-anime fan, I think that in itself, like, there's a W in there, right? Like, while I'm deep in Web3 and I'm not, helping break outside of this bubble, the fact that they've gained a cheerleader, even if I am on the sidelines at the moment, I think that's a W. And I don't know. I do know. I don't have these exact feelings if it not for this morning's conversation. So I think that's not only a good, enjoyable show, but I'm willing to change my mind with new information. And I was kind of on the fence on even just as something as specific as this first episode. Now I'm completely, on the garden side of the fence on this one, Steve. And I think very well done and very well executed, knowing the additional backstory and strategy behind it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Zoo, I'll let you get in with one more point before we close this sucker down.
Yo, well said, Cap. Just one thing about the silo thing. Yeah, we got siloed off because of the FUD. So we, the team had to just rely on themselves and the community. But as rep got, the rep went back up, right? In Web3, they can have more chances to work with others, and they are willing to. So you can hit up Zagabon. He's probably like next door kind of beat. So if you want to talk to him, they're all open.
Yeah, I would have to cop to the fact
too.
that I tossed some hard FUD at Zagabon during the controversy when he when the news came out and his space with Andrew Wang. So I would have to cop and apologize, or at least have a conversation about it, like, because I'm one who kind of owns my words on that stuff. But I am interested potentially in that, because I do want to hear, not that part, because I don't want to revisit that, because he said what he said. So, like, I'm not a big fan of, like, litigating things that have been said on spaces before. People will be like, ask him about it. But I would have to cop to it to him, just so it's not a thing where it's like I'm, bringing him on stage and I'm being like, oh, by the way, like, I did this thing. So, but not that I regret what I said, because, like, at the time, that was my feelings when I heard the Andrew space and everything going on. But he is somebody who maybe we should look at getting on the show, at least to get perspective on everything that's being built, because regardless of what what happened with all that noise, like, we definitely have a brand being just flat out built here and put together, and not really much you can say other than the fact that, like, we're seeing them build in real time, high effort, thoughtfully. So appreciate that. Appreciate the perspective, Zoo. Ellen, Achilles, Dario, everybody else who joined the show this morning. What a wonderful day we've had here, going through all things Azuki. I didn't expect to spend 2 hours on Azuki. I had a whole bunch of Bitcoin stuff we were talking about. We've got some Micro Sailor news, but here we are.
I know you're winding down, and that was the two things I was going to hit on. Is the Michael Saylor news looking to, or is announced, creating a protocol, launching a protocol, building a protocol in the Ordinals ecosystem around, if I understand it right, Steve, kind of like an ENS for that ecosystem. Is that the highest level of it?
Yeah, he's in fact, he's creating identity on Bitcoin, essentially, like doing sort of an ordinals type strategy there. And also, the other thing to add to that, just when we're talking Bitcoin, is BlackRock is talking about recommendations of pulling in Bitcoin and their ETFs into far more investment vehicles that are far larger than anything in our tiny little space, right? As far as like retirements, pensions, etc. So that is really interesting as well. So while we're seeing Bitcoin fall, are we seeing Bitcoin fall? I hate saying this. I'm not trying to be tinfoil hat guy, because it is sell in May and go away, which, by the way, we can change that. Can we just decide to not sell in May and not go away? But is it falling intentionally so that they can get in at better prices? Who knows? A little tinfoil hat for you there, Cap.
Yeah, I don't know that far, but we'll talk a little more Ordinals. We'll talk a little more Sailor tomorrow. It's a Friday show, so we'll do a little bit of catch-all and look ahead to the weekend. The other thing, just quick PSA reminder, if you haven't already, if you're in the Yugi ecosystem, there's several collections. It's not just Apes and Mutants. The board meeting is in the other side tonight. If you haven't already, create your other side account. Like, so for like Moonbirds, for instance, if you're new to Yuga and haven't done an other side trip, get that account created before tonight. I expect, there's been running several hundred in the Discord meetings. I think there's a chance it's quite a bit more to experience whatever they do here. And there's been some interesting wallet activity. Not just the apes. There was 3 apes purchased that we speculate might be the Improbable team. Some other stuff going on there. So Other Side trip tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern. Board meeting inside the Other Side, rather, not a trip per se, but. I'm sure we'll talk about that tomorrow and anything else happening in Web3. NB had something art-wise to talk about. As you close it down, I'll go grab it and pin it up above if anyone... Actually, what it was the first NFT was minted 10 years ago. I'll have to check his sources before I comment much further. But definitely some cool digital art a decade ago. And that was our art minute of the day that we did. We spent he spent 5 seconds yelling about something I don't even remember. But back to you, Steve.
Yeah, no, he's gotta love NB. NB is a gem. NB is a national treasure. There are very few people who can come up and bring a cat art show on stage and fit it into our normal conversation, but he has done so. So, look, that said, great. This show went from like a fine, normal, everyday show, great show, to like an 11 out of 10 when we had the Azuki holders, community, and team jump on stage to help us out today. So I can't get over how grateful we are that we have people who are able to jump by and have these conversations with us on a regular basis. Beyond grateful. So that said, appreciate everyone stopped by this morning. We will be back for probably a shenanigan-filled Friday show. Wrap the week up bright and early tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, everybody.
This episode is brought to you by DGen Network, the only community-based Web3 media network, bringing you the very best content in the NFT and cryptocurrency space. Please visit dgen.network and check out our other great shows. That's DGen, DGEN.network.
Welcome to the future.